Warrior Lore. Chapter 3852. Previously, there were only a few mutated beasts, but now, there were more than 20 of them. This was equivalent to more than 20 Saint Talisman Masters using the Saint Talisman technique. After all, many Saint Talisman Masters could only summon one powerful mutated beast at a time. The first level was actually so dangerous? Of course, there was danger, but Zichen didn't believe it was that dangerous. Because even he felt that it was dangerous, how would the other Descenders deal with it? Then, the only possibility was that he was being targeted. As for who the enemy was, it couldn't be any more obvious. Zichen's hand mysteriously appeared again as he continued to draw talismans. This time, in addition to the Sky Thunder Python, there were also two Spirit Tigers. One Sky Thunder Python stood in the middle, while the two Spirit Tigers stood on the left and right. Zichen followed behind the three beasts and flew forward. Just as the three beasts were being besieged, Zichen moved forward from the ground. The existence of this level wasn't worth him using his full strength. When he avoided the battlefield for the second time, two mutated beasts appeared in front of Zichen again. They were good at speed and were tailing Zichen. They were two saber-tooth leopards with black and white spots. They were like two bolts of lightning as they chased after him. Zichen shook his hand and holy talismans appeared one after another, forming attacks that headed toward the two saber-tooth leopards. This was an attack method of a Saint Talisman Master. The two beasts were agile and dodged these attacks before continuing their pursuit. The distance that had been gradually widened was once again shortened. Zichen's holy talismans obviously didn't have any effect on the two beasts. If he continued to throw out holy talismans, it wouldn't have much effect. Therefore, Zichen switched to using the Ghost Spirit Holy Talisman and attacked in two waves. In the sky, the Holy Talisman shattered and turned into a ghost spirit that headed toward the two saber-tooth leopards. It directly entered his sea of consciousness. The two saber-tooth leopards slowed down while Zichen accelerated forward. However, after advancing for several hundred feet, Zichen suddenly stopped. It wasn't because there was danger ahead, but because he turned around to look behind. There, the saber-tooth leopards that were chasing him had disappeared, but there were no jade slips left behind. There were only two spiritual lights. Zichen walked back the way he came. The two spiritual lights flew towards Zichen and entered his sea of consciousness. Zichen could clearly feel the strengthening of his soul. However, he did not stop. Instead, he went to the place where the saber-toothed leopard had disappeared and carefully searched the surroundings. This was because he hadn't seen the jade slip materialize before. Zichen could not help but frown as he secretly thought to himself, could this be the work of a Saint Symbol Master? If it had been summoned by a Saint Talisman Master, then it would not have formed a jade strip after disappearing. Zichen looked around vigilantly, but didn't see anyone. If that was the case, why didn't the jade slip show up? Could it be a matter of probability? With such doubts in mind, Zichen continued forward. During this period of time, he discovered a few more exotic beasts. However, under Zichen's observation, he discovered that after every exotic beast died, a jade slip would appear. This was also the opportunity of the Sacred Mountain. A Saint Talisman Master who came here was like coming to heaven. However, the Sacred Mountain had a rule that only one item could be taken away on this floor. Therefore, Zichen was indifferent to those jade slips. Otherwise, according to his temperament, he would have taken them all away long ago. After all, if he brought them to the outside world, they would fetch a high price. And if he brought them to the Saint Spirit domain, they would fetch a sky-high price. Zichen, who was moving forward, stopped again. A light flashed across his mind. He seemed to have vaguely guessed the reason. He took out the Saint Talisman brush and began to draw talismans. This time, it was the Ghost Spirit Saint Talisman. Zichen did not know that his actions had once again caused an uproar in the entire Sacred Mountain City and the Sacred Mountain, because something illogical had happened to him once again. As a bystander, they saw very clearly that the two saber-tooth leopards came from the Sacred Mountain and were not man-made. However, after Zichen killed them, no jade slip appeared. For a time, all kinds of discussions and arguments sounded. 16 Saint Talismans appeared in front of Zichen. They were all Ghost Spirit Saint Talismans. This was his limit at the moment. As the number decreased, the power of a single ghost spirit saint talisman also increased. Putting away the ghost spirit saint talisman, Zichun walked forward. After a while, he found 3 exotic beasts. He summoned the Sky Thunder Python and was responsible for dealing with one. The other 2 would be dealt with by the ghost spirit saint talisman. Zichun was experimenting. The others outside the sacred mountain were also paying close attention to this scene. The Sky Thunder Python killed an exotic beast, and a jade slip appeared at the place where the exotic beast died. The ghost spirit saint talisman killed 2 exotic beasts, but after they died, nothing was left behind. Obviously, this confirms Zichun's guess. The soul power that returned to his sea of consciousness strengthened his soul again. Feeling the obvious changes in his soul, Zichun decided not to leave. Instead, he stayed to improve the level of the ghost spirit saint talisman. After all, there was no time limit in this place. Moreover, there was only one chance. Obviously, Zichun was not willing to miss it. After his soul was restored, he continued to draw the ghost spirit saint talisman. There was nothing on the first level that he wanted to take away, but he could use this place as a training ground. A place for the ghost spirit saint talisman to train was very rare. Zichun was in a good mood as he cultivated. In the sacred mountain city, the discussion had not stopped. Many people were asking about Zichun's methods. Some people even asked the Shishan brothers, but they did not know about this. However, compared to the curious crowd, the people of the sacred mountain were bleeding at this moment. This was because every exotic beast that Zichun killed was equivalent to 1 less jade slip for the sacred mountain. Although it was not to the point of complete extinction, it would take a long time for the sacred mountain to breed such an exotic beast. No one wanted to see Zichun continue killing like this. Therefore, some people wanted to contact the sage Heavenly Mirror to find a way to directly get themselves to the second level. Looking at the current situation, the first level was obviously no longer a threat to him. At this time, the gambling house no longer allowed people to bet on Zichun, who was on the first level. The number of ghost spirit saint talismans that Zichun wrote was decreasing. His progress was very fast. 15 talismans, 14 talismans, 13 talismans. The spectators were very puzzled. They did not understand why the number of talismans that Zichun wrote was decreasing. Zichun, on the other hand, was very clear that the power of the ghost spirit saint talisman would increase exponentially with each reduction. When there were only 12 talismans left, Zichun clearly felt the change in the ghost spirit saint talisman. At this time, a new round of siege came. There were more than a dozen exotic beasts. Looking at these exotic beasts, Zichun was expressionless. He directly threw out the ghost spirit saint talisman in his hand. The 12 saint talismans spread out and faced the 12 powerful beasts. Chapter 38:53. Looking at the 12 mutated beasts that died in an instant on the screen, the Sagely Mountain City became incomparably quiet. Everyone was shocked. This lethality was too terrifying. It was a complete massacre. If Zichun didn't enter the second level, all the holy symbol beasts on the first level would be slaughtered by Zichun. At this point, there was no suspense as to whether Zichun would enter the second level. The Shishan brothers made a huge profit because of this. When the 12 balls of soul light returned to his sea of consciousness, Zichun realized that his soul didn't grow stronger this time. He knew that the growth of the ghost spirit holy symbol had reached a limit. It was time to go to the next level. Descenders stood at the entrance of the second level, including Lei Xian, who Zichun had seen before. This was the ambush location they had found. They wanted to kill Zichun here in one go. Actually, Lei Xian had planned to attack Zichun at the entrance of the first level. However, many of them didn't agree, so they set the ambush location here. Lei Xian was very clear about what their concerns were. They were afraid that Zichun would eliminate them here. If they were eliminated on the first level, they wouldn't be able to enter the Sagely Mountain and would leave directly. However, the second level was different. They had to guard this place for 500 years. This way, they could obtain more benefits. No one wanted to leave early after coming to this place where they could increase their soul power. They were able to reach the human soul stage. Once they returned, they would be 7-star holy symbol masters. What kind of glory was this? Killing Zichun was important, But breaking through to the next level was something that needed to be taken seriously. Once they advanced to the Heavenly Soul stage, they would be 9-star Holy Symbol Masters when they returned to the Saint Spirit realm. They would be the number 1 person below the Holy Venerate. Lei Xin looked at the nervous crowd and said confidently, "Don't worry, everyone. Zichun must have suffered serious injuries from the siege of so many beasts. When he arrives here, we will attack with all our strength. He will definitely die." Hearing Lei Sun's words, some nodded while others remained silent. Obviously, they wouldn't come to a conclusion until they saw Zichen with their own eyes. "If you don't believe me, just wait. Our people will come back with news soon. However, what I'm worried about right now is that if we stay at the entrance to the second floor, what if the injured Zichen hides in the first floor to heal himself?" This possibility existed, but Lei Xin also made arrangements immediately. That was to find someone who was good at concealing sacred runes to monitor Zichen. He estimated that Zichen should be back soon. At this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly sounded from the entrance. It was a human soul descender who had run in. When Lei Chan saw the other party, he smiled and asked, "How is it? Is Zichun seriously injured and is recuperating outside? We have to go back and kill him, right?" "Kill my ass. He's not injured at all. He's completely oppressed those holy symbol beasts." The newcomer panted heavily. After seeing how powerful Zichun was, he didn't dare to delay any longer. He immediately headed for the second floor, worried that Zichun would catch up and kill him. "What?" Lei Chan's expression changed. "You said he's not injured at all? How is that possible?" The others were also in disbelief. One had to know that they had agreed to Lei Chan's suggestion because they knew of his secret plan. How could so many holy symbol beasts not injure Zichun at all? "I saw it with my own eyes. He has an extremely powerful holy symbol art that can instantly kill those holy symbol beasts. We have to go. He'll be here soon." Since Zichun was uninjured, the following battle would definitely be difficult for everyone. Perhaps more than half of them would die. Everyone subconsciously looked at Lei Chan. Lei Chan pondered for a moment before saying, "Let's go deeper first and find the opportunity here." Everyone nodded. Since they had come here and encountered Zichun, then they had to kill Zichun. However, before that, they naturally couldn't miss out on the opportunity. Everyone immediately went deeper to find their own opportunity. The encirclement plan thus failed. Zichun successfully arrived at the second level. Those who had bet on Zichun had all made a lot of money. This level was called the human level. It was 1 level higher than the first level. According to Oli, it was worth it for a human spirit to reach this level. Moreover, the holy symbol art here was of an extremely high level. At the very least, it surpassed Zichen's Sky Thunder Python and Spirit Tiger. Therefore, he had to obtain a holy symbol art after coming here. Moreover, he could only obtain one. When Oli said this, there was an obvious pause before he repeated, "Remember, you can only take one thing." Zichen didn't quite understand the meaning behind those words. However, after he passed through the first level, he understood. It was true that he could only take one thing, but no one said that he couldn't comprehend other holy symbol arts here. Along the way, he didn't encounter anyone who wanted to ambush him. This surprised Zichen a little. However, after checking again and again and confirming that there was no one around, he continued on with ease. Not long after, Zichen saw a tall giant ape appear in his field of vision. This giant ape was somewhat similar to the one he saw on the first level. However, instead of hair, it was covered in fine black scales. It was somewhat similar to the devil ape that had grown larger. Just as Zichen saw the other party also saw Zichen. It clenched its fists and beat its chest a few times, like a king defending its territory. However, the other party didn't give Zichen a chance to leave. Instead, it immediately leaped, and in an instant, it was already several hundred feet away. In Zichen's eyes, the giant ape seemed to have turned into a huge mountain, whistling toward him. Dark clouds rolled above Zichen's head, and the Sky Thunder Python appeared. The giant ape smashed its fist down, and a sharp whistle sounded. Lightning flashed around the Sky Thunder Python, and its tail swept over. There was a loud bang. In just 2 punches, the giant ape had ended the battle. The first punch knocked back the python's tail, and the second punch hit the Sky Thunder Python's head. The Sky Thunder Python's huge body collapsed, and the terrifying power it produced didn't cause any harm to the giant ape. Zichun, who wanted to see the giant ape's strength, saw this scene, and his eyes lit up. As expected of a high-level place, the power of the holy symbol arts wasn't just a little bit stronger. Since the giant ape was so strong, Zichun decided to start with it. He shook his hand, and 12 ghost spirit saint talismans appeared. They revolved in the air, forming a talisman array. As the ghost spirit saint talismans disappeared, 12 ghost spirits the size of human heads immediately rushed toward the giant ape. After seeing the giant ape's strength, one ghost spirit saint talisman wouldn't be able to deal with it, so he had to use the ghost spirit saint talisman. Chapter 38:54. Once the ghost spirit holy talisman appeared, the battle ended as expected. The 12 ghost spirit sacred talismans easily killed the huge ape. As for Zichun, he naturally did not gain anything. The return of the soul power slightly strengthened Zichun's soul, which was the only consolation. He shook his head and said, "Looks like I have to be more careful in the future. I can't be so careless." He didn't immediately move forward, but continued to draw talismans. There were a total of 12 ghost spirit holy talismans. With the ghost spirit holy talismans in hand, it was equivalent to Zichun having a huge life-saving trump card. And this delay caused the distance between Zichun and Leichun and the others to widen. After another 15 minutes, Zichun encountered the second mutated beast, which was the holy talisman beast. This time, it was a black tiger, but it had a pair of wings. This was obviously a type of holy talisman technique, but he didn't know how it was different from the ghost tiger. So, Zichun drew a ghost tiger. In the next moment, the ghost tiger was torn to pieces by this ghost tiger with wings. One could imagine its combat strength. Zichun's eyes lit up. This time, he couldn't let it suffer any more losses. So, he went forward and attacked. Fist against tiger claws, a pure confrontation of strength. With a loud bang, a powerful force shook Zichun's body and forced him back 100 feet. After stabilizing his body, Zichun went forward again and punched again. Countless bolts of lightning curled around his fist, dazzling everyone's eyes. Boom! This time, there was a thunderous explosion. Zichun was forced back more than 150 feet, and the winged ghost tiger was also forced back by Zichun. In the Sagely Mountain City, there was a burst of exclamations. No one expected Zichun to be so powerful. He was clearly a descender, but he dared to use his fist to fight the holy talisman beast head-on. Could his body be comparable to those holy talisman beasts? Isn't this too inhumane? He's simply a savage beast. Oli stayed in a very inconspicuous place in the city. As he listened to the discussions around him, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up into a faint smile. How could the people he nurtured be ordinary? Young Master seems to have a lot of confidence in him. Suddenly, a faint voice came from Oli's side. It was Wu Yud. It was unknown when he had arrived. Oli didn't say anything as he looked at the scene of the two sides clashing in the sky. Wu Yud didn't ask any questions and continued to watch the battle in the sky with Oli. After a while, Wu Yud said, "His physical body isn't weak, but it isn't realistic for him to defeat the holy symbol beast. That guy isn't stupid. If you can see that, he knows it even better," Oli said indifferently. Sure enough, as soon as Oli's voice fell, a long black staff appeared in Zichun's hand. It was the staff that seemed to be a saint-level soul weapon. Zichun stepped forward with the stick in his hand. Lightning flashed on the long rod, causing each of his attacks to be extremely powerful. After using his soul weapon, the winged Yu who was at a disadvantage and kept retreating. Zichun followed closely behind and hit him again and again. Oli looked at this scene and nodded in satisfaction. That guy isn't stupid. He knows how to hide his strength. At the same time, he glanced in another direction. In that scene, Shangluan seemed to have entered an uninhabited land. His light was like the sun, and it was impossible not to attract everyone's attention. After 50 hits, Yuhu's body exploded. Zichun obtained a jade scroll that recorded a saint-level talisman art. The scarlet-winged tiger. Zichun looked around. When he didn't find anything unusual, he extended his soul power into it. He began to comprehend it on the spot. In the sagely mountain city, there was an uproar. This kind of situation had happened before. After all, there were many smart people, but only a few could succeed. Most of them could only waste their time until the end of the test. Originally, Zichen's odds of entering the third level were very high, but now, after seeing Zichen's actions, his odds dropped. At the same time, there were many people who bet that Zichen wouldn't be able to enter the third level. This was a timely bet. After a while, Zichen opened his eyes. In everyone's opinion, Zichen didn't intend to continue trying. Those who bet that Zichen wouldn't be able to enter the next level were already regretting it. Unexpectedly, after Zichen opened his eyes and looked around, he sat cross-legged again and began to comprehend. There was another uproar in the city. This time, Zichen was determined to comprehend. However, due to the previous mistakes, everyone was still very cautious. After Zichen sat cross-legged for an entire day without moving, those who were paying attention began to place their bets. They were very sure that Zichen wouldn't be able to enter the third level. The Shishan brothers were still very confident in Zichen. They firmly believed that Zichen would be able to reach the third level, so they continued to place more bets. A day passed. 2 days passed. Another 3 days passed. Zichen was still trying to comprehend. It was obvious that he was determined to learn the Scarlet Spirit Winged Tiger. Many people in the city who bet that Zichen would be able to enter the third level were anxious. The Shishan brothers were still very confident in Zichen. After following Zichen for so long, they were very clear about Zichen's personality. As the leader of the group, he wasn't a fool. He knew what was important. Sure enough, on the 5th day, he opened his eyes again. Amidst the exclamations, he threw away the jade scroll in his hand and flew into the distance. In an instant, there was an uproar. Did he succeed, or did he give up? However, many people were more willing to believe that he failed and gave up because he knew that he couldn't succeed. Not long after, Zichen encountered another holy symbol beast. However, he didn't take the initiative to attack this time. Instead, he chose to avoid it. Over and over again. In the eyes of the crowd, Zichen was obviously trying to enter the third level as soon as possible. As for everything here, he would give up on it. The current time was enough. This caused many people to feel extremely vexed. If Zichen had really successfully reached the third level, then they would have suffered a great loss. Zichen, who was constantly avoiding, suddenly stopped when he encountered a serpent. The serpent had 2 horns on its head and was surrounded by lightning. Dark clouds rolled above its head. Everywhere it passed, the air was filled with a violent aura. This should be the advanced version of the Sky Thunder Serpent, just like the Scarlet Spirit Winged Tiger. After stopping, Zichen soared into the sky with the long rod in his hand again. The rod fell. Countless lightning bolts bloomed, leaving a clear mark in the sky. Boom! The lightning exploded, and the serpent's body fell to the ground. The lightning around its body also dimmed a little. Zichen's figure fell, and the long rod in his hand smashed down again. Boom! 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 After dozens of strikes, the thunder serpent didn't move at all. Then, its body collapsed. A jade scroll appeared in front of him. Zichen took the jade scroll and probed it with his soul. Sky Thunder Serpent. Chapter 38:55. Zichen's action caused another uproar. Was he going to comprehend it again? Wasn't he afraid of wasting time? There were some slight changes to the odds. Zichen didn't know what was happening outside. He was only comprehending the holy talisman art. Because of the lesson he learned, his progress was extremely fast. This kind of progress was unimaginable to others. The odds kept changing, and more people placed their bets. At the same time, in the deepest part of the area, Lei Chan and the others gathered again. Every one of them had obtained a powerful holy talisman art, but they hadn't refined it yet. Zichen still hadn't caught up to them, which was somewhat out of their expectations. One of them suggested, "Why don't we go directly to the 3rd floor? If they reached the 3rd floor and obtained the treasures there, they would only need to stay in the holy mountain for 100 years. Lei Chan frowned. In fact, his original intention was to kill Zichen because they had more people on their side, and they had the absolute advantage. And once they killed Zichen, then the fortuitous encounter in this place would naturally become theirs. Lei Chan said in a deep voice, Zi-chan must die. This was their mission. The person who spoke earlier said, why don't we go to the third floor and wait for him? Let's go and see the situation first. The others nodded. None of them had any objections. Therefore, the group decided to go to the second floor to take a look at the entrance to the third floor. There must be something good on the top floor. No one was willing to miss such an opportunity. Because they weren't far from the depths, it didn't take long for them to see the passage to the third floor. I'll go in and take a look. One of the people's eyes lit up and immediately flew forward. But just as he was about to reach the entrance, countless light spots suddenly appeared in front of him and turned into a tall figure. He was like a war god, holding a giant axe and wearing battle armor. The moment he appeared, he swung his axe down. A bolt of lightning seemed to appear in the sky. The giant axe displayed an agility that didn't match its huge size. Before the descender could react, it had cut his body in half. Cut in half. The descender turned into a corpse. When Lei Chan and the others saw this scene, their expressions changed drastically and they quickly retreated. As for that godlike existence, he coldly glanced at them and did not chase after them. The next moment, his figure disappeared into thin air, turning into countless specks of light that scattered. The passageway was once again empty, but this time, no one stepped forward, including Lei Chan. Everyone was still in shock. That existence from before was simply too strong. They were no match for him at all. At the same time, the spectators in the Sagely Mountain City also saw the war god, causing a huge commotion. The holy talisman beasts on the second floor were already very powerful. Only someone as powerful as Zi-chan could pass through them easily. For example, Lei Chan and the others had to team up before. However, this was the first time such a powerful existence had appeared. Even if he was the guardian of the trial, he was still a little too strong. Compared to the uproar in the crowd, many people who knew about the Sacred Mountain's history changed their expressions when they saw the axe-wielding war god. Sacred Mountain battle spirit? How is that possible? Wu Yud, who had been following Oli for the past few days, exclaimed when he saw the figure. Oli said indifferently, this is the Sacred Mountain. What's impossible here? But it's unprecedented for a Sacred Mountain battle spirit to appear on this floor. Wu Yud said, under normal circumstances, it might not even appear on the third floor. Now, it has appeared on the second floor. Is it trying to end the trial early for those descenders? Oli's expression changed slightly when he saw the Sacred Mountain battle spirit instantly kill a human soul realm cultivator. It seems that even on the second floor, its power hasn't weakened. Wu Yud shook his head and said, impossible, absolutely impossible. This shouldn't happen. Even if the sagely heavenly mirror is willing, the mountain master on the holy talisman mountain won't. After all, there will be one less descender to die. You should change your habit of being a busybody. So what if they're all dead? The descenders and us are from two different worlds. Oli said indifferently, still looking as if he didn't care about anything. Wu Yud turned around and said, if all the descenders are annihilated this time, what about Zi-chan? Didn't you say that he has outstanding talent and is different from the other descenders? What will happen if he dies? Zi-chan? Oli was stunned at first, but then a meaningful smile appeared on his face. It'll be great if he dies. Wu Yud felt that Oli was crazy. On the Holy Talisman Mountain, a group of descenders arrived at the peak. There was only one building here, and it was a thatched hut. Usually, this place was like a forbidden area. Very few people could come here, or rather, they dared to come here. But today was different. A dozen people were standing a few dozen feet away from the thatched hut. They were all old men. Some were kneeling on the ground, while others were standing there. All of them were fuming with anger and were very agitated. Mountain Master, the appearance of a battle spirit is against the rules. They will all be annihilated. An old man said bitterly, it wasn't easy for our holy mountain to have some descenders with potential. We should use this opportunity to help them become stronger and not annihilate them all. We can't compare to those natives. The number of descenders is already very small. Every death is a huge loss to us. At this moment, a voice came from the thatched hut. So, you all made a decision on your own? The group of old men clearly didn't expect to receive a response from that existence. After a slight pause, they said, "We are currently lacking people. Naturally, the more people that come, the better." The mountain master's voice sounded again. "Our holy talisman mountain doesn't lack people, but experts. No matter how many people come, they will all be a bunch of rice buckets. Even if they come here, they will only eat until they run out. The resources on the holy talisman mountain will be devoured by those vermin sooner or later." But Mountain Master, without waiting for them to finish, the Mountain Master said, "This is the decision of the holy heavenly mirror spirit. If you don't want to see it in your heart, then go and find the mirror spirit." The few of them looked at each other, and there was a hint of joy in their eyes. Compared to the eccentric mountain lord, mirror spirit was easier to deal with. They immediately took their leave and went to find the mirror spirit to discuss this matter. The holy heavenly mirror was unfamiliar and mysterious to the people of the world. But to the people of the holy mountain, it was very common and couldn't be more common. As long as there was a problem, it had become a habit to find the mirror spirit. Chapter 38:56. When Lian came to find Mirror Spirit was leaning against a tree and taking a nap. "Senior Mirror Spirit," Lian softly called out, and Mirror Spirit opened his eyes. If Zichun was here, he would definitely recognize Mirror Spirit. It was the old man he saw when he was climbing the mountain. "Lian, it's you. Why are you free today?" Mirror Spirit smiled, but there was an inexplicable emotion in his smile. "Lord Mirror Spirit, something happened. Something big happened." Lian pretended to be flustered and said, "A battle spirit appeared on the second floor and almost killed all of our people." "Oh, there's such a thing?" Mirror Spirit's face had a trace of doubt. Lian wouldn't believe that Mirror Spirit didn't know about this, but he clearly couldn't expose him, so he said, "Lord, why don't you take a look and make an exception?" Mirror Spirit pretended to glance into the distance. It wasn't clear if he saw it, but he said, "Oh, there really is such a thing. However, this battle spirit has already appeared. If we take it back, it will greatly affect the reputation of our sacred mountain. There are so many people betting in the sacred mountain gambling house, so they will naturally complain. When the time comes, how will the two of us deal with this?" Lian reacted quickly and said, "Since we can't take it back, can we trouble Lord to protect them?" Mirror Spirit heard this and said with a troubled expression, "I'm afraid that won't work. After all, you descenders are different from the rest. It's extremely difficult." Extremely difficult meant that there was still a way. Lian understood Mirror Spirit's meaning and immediately said, "Lord, don't worry. As long as they don't die, we will pay for all the resources used." Mirror Spirit patted Lian's shoulder and said, "Since you've said this much, it would be wrong of me to not help you. Don't worry, I will protect them." Lian felt relieved and left. This was the Mirror Spirit of the sacred mountain. Everything was negotiable. As long as the price was enough, he could negotiate anything. After Lian left, Mirror Spirit put away its indifferent attitude and turned to look at the second level of St. Talisman Mountain. It saw the figure sitting cross-legged there. "I want to see what makes you so special that St. Talisman Mountain would place a battle spirit on the second level." Asterisk, 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 asterisk. One of them was killed in an instant. Lei Chan and the others retreated in fear. This was too terrifying. Although they had the advantage in numbers, from the looks of it, they could only be slaughtered by that powerful existence. For a moment, everyone's mood was very depressed. Obviously, the second floor was the limit. At this time, Lei Chan's eyes suddenly lit up as he said, "I got it. I have a plan to kill two birds with one stone." Everyone looked at Lei Chan. Lei Chan smiled and said, "Let's hide and let Zichun fight this existence. If he dies, it will be great, but if both sides are injured, it will be time for us to reap the benefits." When everyone heard this, their eyes lit up, thinking that this method was feasible. They immediately began to discuss how to conceal themselves without being discovered by Zichun. Zichun sat cross-legged for 3 days. After 3 days, he opened his eyes. Lightning surged in his eyes, and it did not dissipate for a long time. Because he had learned from his predecessor's example, his improvement was extremely fast. he could be considered to have truly obtained a great harvest. Then, he continued forward. But this time, no one was shocked because the path ahead was almost completely sealed. In just a few days, news of the sacred mountain's battle spirit had already spread. After knowing how powerful the battle spirit was, no one believed that these descenders could reach the third floor. This time, even the Shishan brothers had lost some of their confidence. When they continued to bet, they were no longer as resolute. Zichun continued forward. Along the way, he encountered a few sacred symbol beasts, but he avoided them one by one. Only when he encountered a giant ape did he make a move again. He obtained the giant ape's jade slip and then put it away. Clearly, he planned to take it away. Several days later, Zichun arrived at the depths and saw the entrance to the third floor. Just like the first floor, there was no powerful existence guarding the entrance. But Zichun's sharp perception still detected some problems. He scanned the surroundings carefully, but he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. But that bad feeling still existed in his heart. There were many people here, but he did not see a single person along the way. Where was everyone? Did they all enter the third floor? But back then, Oli had said that it was not easy to enter the third floor. After all, after reaching the third floor, one only needed to serve the sacred mountain for 100 years. It was impossible that all descenders had the potential to enter the third floor, right? But the third floor was right in front of him, and he did not encounter any suspicious situations along the way. After some hesitation, Zichun decided to continue forward. His goal was the fourth floor, so how could he stop here? As he approached the passage, the energy ahead began to surge, and a tyrannical aura appeared. The unforeseen event had arrived. Not only was Zichun not surprised, he even smiled faintly. This was the right thing to do. It would be abnormal if he walked smoothly. But after seeing the tall figure in front of him, he could no longer smile. The other party gave him a strong sense of crisis. A mountain-like oppressive aura was pressing down on him. So that's how it is. Zichun cursed in a low voice, finally understanding the reason. With such a powerful war god present, it would be strange if this place was lively. The world shook as the sacred mountain battle spirit took a step forward and swung down the battle axe in his hand. A ray of light appeared between heaven and earth, like a bolt of lightning streaking across the sky. Zichun's eyes were illuminated brightly. Countless rays of light appeared in his field of vision, carrying with them the weight of a mountain. His pupils constricted as lightning flickered in front of him, revealing a tyrannical aura. Clang! The momentum of the axe was blocked, and a loud clang resounded as powerful fluctuations spread out. An attack that could kill a human soul realm cultivator was blocked by Zichun just like that. The huge axe blade was blocked by a small stick. Countless rays of light surged, forming one powerful wave after another. Cries of alarm rang out in the sacred mountain city. After blocking the giant axe's attack, Saint Talismans flew out from Zichun's body. They were the ghost spirit Saint Talismans, and there were a total of 12 of them. However, as soon as they appeared, Zichun regained his senses and withdrew them. If the existence in front of him was also formed by a kind of holy talisman art, it would be a waste if it was killed by the ghost spirit. In Zichun's body, lightning soul power was crazily injected, and a powerful aura surged. Zichun took advantage of the momentum to retreat. As he retreated, he put away the long stick, and the holy talisman brush appeared in his hand. A light lit up on the brush, looking extremely extraordinary. Zichun held the brush, and soul power flowed at the tip of the brush. He was drawing talismans. Countless soul power appeared from all directions like a storm, gathering in front of Zichun as if it had turned into a huge vortex. In the center of the vortex, a violent aura appeared, and a black winged tiger appeared. The scarlet winged tiger. It was a human-level holy talisman art. Its body was huge, and it floated in the air like a floating mountain. Chapter 3857. Upon seeing the scarlet-winged tiger, exclamations rang out from the city once again. This was the second level of the holy talisman art. None of the descenders had grasped it yet. Who would have thought that Zichun had actually comprehended it? Could it be that he had comprehended this holy talisman art in just a few days of sitting cross-legged? The The scarlet-winged tiger flapped its wings and disappeared from its original spot. In the next moment, it arrived beside the sacred mountain battle spirit and slashed down with its claws. A huge axe blocked the front. With a clang, the scarlet-winged tiger was forced back. However, it wasn't injured at all and flew forward again. During this time, it constantly dodged and attacked the sacred mountain battle spirit. The axe in the sacred mountain battle spirit's hand constantly flickered and streaked across the sky like bolts of lightning. The scarlet-winged tiger couldn't get close at all, let alone injure it. Seeing this scene, Zichun took a deep breath and slashed down with the unpredictable brush again. Black clouds gathered in the sky, and an even more powerful soul power fluctuation appeared. A flood dragon appeared. This was the second holy talisman art. A flying tiger and a flood dragon, one on the left and one on the right, besieged the battle spirit. Zichun didn't know the current situation in the sacred mountain city and how shocked everyone was. He held his staff and advanced. 1 man and 2 beasts against the battle spirit. Good fellow. He really comprehended it. Wu Yud exclaimed in disbelief. He had never seen someone with such high comprehension ability. In just a few days, he had actually grasped 2 powerful holy talisman arts. At the same time, the elders in the Holy Talisman Mountain were also shocked when they saw this scene. This level of comprehension was simply too frightening. Oli's expression didn't change much. He understood Zichun very well and knew that he would consider before doing anything to see how confident he was. He could see the current situation far more than the average person. He believed that Zichun could personally feel the power of the sacred mountain battle spirit. Since he had displayed these 2 techniques, he naturally had his own intentions. However, looking at the current situation, it wouldn't be easy to kill the battle spirit even if 1 man and 2 beasts worked together. Actually, it wasn't that it wasn't easy, it was extremely difficult. The strength of the holy mountain battle spirit had surpassed everyone's expectations. Even though it didn't make sense for it to appear on the second level, its strength hadn't weakened at all. Streaks of rainbow light appeared one after another. Those were the traces left behind by the giant axe, leaving clear marks in the air. Zichun moved forward again. His main purpose was to block. The giant axe fell, and the long staff blocked it. Clanging sounds rang out, accompanied by powerful shock waves, and countless sparks flew in all directions. Just as the long rod blocked the giant axe's attack, the red-winged tiger and the serpent advanced rapidly. 2 attacks landed on the war spirit one after another. With a loud explosion, the battle spirit was forced back by a formidable strength. The light around its body dimmed a little, but that was all. The attention of many people in the city fell on Zichun's battle because it was too difficult. The battle spirit was too powerful. The battle lasted for 2 hours. During this time, Zichun had used the human-grade Saint Talisman technique 3 times. The battle spirit's aura became increasingly weak. The light around its body also became increasingly dim. Die. Seizing the opportunity, Zichun immediately rushed into the sky. The long rod in his hand bloomed with countless streaks of lightning. A powerful aura was released from his body, but the patterns on it didn't light up. Zichun also didn't use any combat techniques. Obviously, Zichun was still deliberately hiding a part of his strength until now. The battle spirit, which had consumed a lot of energy, blocked with its giant axe. With a boom, the giant axe in its hand flew out and smashed into the distance. A large crater instantly appeared on the ground. The power of Zichun's long rod didn't diminish. It landed on the battle spirit's head. With a loud boom, the battle spirit's huge body collapsed. Zichun stood in the air, allowing the energy around him to dissipate. His eyes were fixed in front of him. There was deep anticipation in his eyes. A bright and resplendent brilliance appeared in Zichun's vision. The brilliance came from a jade scroll. He didn't need to guess to know that what was recorded in the jade scroll was a type of holy talisman art. Moreover, it was the holy talisman art that could summon the battle spirit from before. Close at hand, Zichun immediately reached out and firmly grasped the jade scroll in his hand. This was what he really wanted this time. As for the original giant ape jade scroll, Zichun directly took it out and casually threw it away. Because he could only take that one thing, he gave up on the previous one. At this moment, his gaze swept around. Waves of soul power fluctuations appeared one after another. They were all people, or rather, it was the descenders. They, who had been hiding before, appeared one by one after the battle spirit died. Zichen glanced at them. His expression didn't change much because he had already expected this. Finally, his gaze fell on Lei Chan. He could be considered an acquaintance. Lei Chan looked at Zichen and said indifferently, "I didn't expect you to be so strong. Hand over the holy talisman art, and I can leave you with an intact corpse." Zichen waved the jade scroll in his hand and said, "If you want it, come and get it yourself." The eyes of the surrounding people flashed. They had all seen how powerful the battle spirit from before was. Who wouldn't want a holy talisman art that could summon a battle spirit? After witnessing Zichen's strength, Lei Chan naturally didn't dare to go up alone. Currently, Zichen was clearly exhausted, but it wouldn't be a problem for him to kill a few more people. Therefore, he didn't want to be the one to stand out. Thus, he waved his hand and said, "Everyone, attack together." As his voice fell, everyone retreated in unison. Clearly, everyone had their own plans in mind. While retreating, everyone also used the holy talisman art. This was the correct way for holy talisman masters to fight. They would never get close. In an instant, nearly 100 holy talismans appeared in the sky. At the same time, the holy talisman masters also displayed various holy talisman arts from the first level. For example, the Silver Wolf, Phantom Tiger, Sky Thunder Python, Great Ape, and various other holy talisman arts. In the Sagely Mountain City, the Shishan brothers cursed loudly for being shameless. Those damned bastards were all as cowardly as mice. They first hid, but now that Zichen had one, they all came out one by one. Why didn't they just go straight to the third level? How dare they attack Zichen? Some of the existences who had bet that Zichen could reach the third level also cursed. However, there were also those who clapped their hands in joy. They were those who had bet that Zichen wouldn't be able to reach the third level. This was because if Zichen successfully reached the third level, it would be a great loss for them. When the holy talismans appeared in the sky, Zichen also had holy talismans appear around him. However, compared to the numerous holy talismans, his method was clearly insufficient. Even if he didn't care about these descenders, they had an absolute advantage, so Zichen had to face them head-on. Therefore, if he wanted to break out of this situation, he had to reveal some trump cards. This time, it was a battle technique. In his left hand, soul power transformed into a shield that shone brightly. In his right hand, an energy staff appeared. A bolt of lightning descended from the sky. Zichen raised the light shield in his left hand and said, "Block." His voice was clear and loud, spreading throughout the entire Sagely Mountain City. The lightning was blocked by the light shield. "Attack." In the next moment, he swung his staff. An afterimage flashed past, and a descender was sent flying. Chapter 38:58. Countless powerful attacks fell from the sky towards Zichen. It was as if huge waves were coming from all directions, wanting to drown Zichen. Zichen stood between heaven and earth with a shield in one hand and a staff in the other. Countless rays of light were released from his body. With a flicker, Zichen vanished from sight. Martial arts was an extremely famous technique in the Sacred Mountain. There were two factions, and both sides were in a competitive relationship. In the history of the Sacred Mountain, both sides had clashed many times with victories and defeats. The most recent one was the huge gamble 100 years ago. In the end, the Tremor martial arts lost, causing the Sacred Mountain gambling house to suffer heavy losses and change owners. Since then, the successor of the Tremor martial arts disappeared without a trace. In the entire Sacred Mountain, only the Sacred martial arts were famous outside. Unexpectedly, after so many years, the Tremor martial arts reappeared in the world. Zichen used the Tremor martial arts to dodge the attacks and rapidly approached a descender. The staff in his hand instantly smashed down. A whistling sound echoed, leaving a clear staff mark in the air. Bang! A descender was sent flying by Zichen and began to cough blood in midair. Zichen's figure flashed again and approached the second descender. The other party's holy runes flickered, attacking and defending. Zichen blocked the attack with the shield in his left hand and counterattacked with the staff in his right hand. The powerful attack instantly broke through the descender's defense and sent him flying. When the other party was sent flying, Zichen followed closely and struck with the second staff. The descender's body fell to the ground and stopped breathing after landing. He was dead. This time, Zichen didn't hold back and used a killing move. After closing the distance between the two sides, he was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, slaughtering in all directions. This was also the biggest drawback of descenders. They didn't dare to let others get close to them. The tremor martial arts reappearance in the world shocked many people, but at the same time, they also had deep doubts in their hearts. How could a descender like Zichen grasp a soul technique that belonged to their world? As expected, he's amazing, Wu Yud exclaimed in surprise as he watched Zichen enter an uninhabited land. However, he immediately looked at another image. In that image, no one dared to cross swords with Shang Luan. Everyone knew that Shang Luan was the successor of the holy battle technique. The tremor battle technique had reappeared in the world. The two of them would definitely have a battle in the end. Oli remained silent. As the battle continued, Zichen's trump card would eventually be exposed. He didn't care if the tremor combat technique was used in such a situation. On the Saint Talisman Mountain, the corners of Lian and the rest's mouths twitched as they watched the one-sided battle. Zichen showed no mercy. One descender after another was killed by his staff, and the number of descenders was constantly decreasing. If it weren't for the agreement between Lian and the mirror spirit that could save their lives, they would be heartbroken to see these descenders die. This child's talent is indeed not bad, but his actions are too ruthless. He doesn't even care about the friendship of the same race. This kind of cruel nature is too unlikable. One of the old men said in dissatisfaction, "I feel that this child's temperament is not bad. After all, those people didn't intend to let him go." Under such circumstances, combat strength naturally determines everything. Another person said, "That's true. However, he clearly has a great advantage, yet he still wants to kill them all. With such a ruthless nature, who knows what will happen to him in the future once he joins our Saint Mountain?" The previous person said again. His tone was full of dissatisfaction. "We don't know what will happen in the future, but I know that we will soon have to pay a large sum of blue crystal coins to Lord Mirror Spirit to revive them. Since you also know that we have to pay the price for their deaths, why do you, Shirkuan, still speak up for that guy? Reviving them is what we should do. This doesn't hinder my appreciation of Zichen. Yes, if I were in his position, I would make the same choice as him." The old man named Shirkuan said, "You." At this moment, Lian's voice sounded. "All right, that's enough." Right now, he was in a very bad mood because too many people had died. That guy named Zichen obviously didn't know what it meant to be merciful. Whenever possible, one should be lenient. As a result, he would have to bear a large sum of resurrection fees. At the same time, he was also very puzzled. Why did that guy Zichen know a soul technique? This defied common sense and violated the rules. These people originally had the opportunity to enter the third floor, but because they ambushed Zichen and forced Zichen to use his martial arts trump card, they lost the qualification. And it was permanent. Everyone was killed by Zichen. Not a single one was left alive. Even those who saw the situation turn bad and tried to escape were caught and killed by Zichen. There were corpses everywhere. Not a single one was left alive. Zichen glanced at these corpses expressionlessly. The staff and shield in his hands dissipated into light of energy. The surroundings were silent. Zichen walked towards the third floor. The moment he stepped into the third floor, two different kinds of shouts erupted from the Sagely Mountain City. Some were inexplicably excited and shouted. Some were in grief and pain, crying and making a fuss. No matter how many miracles Zichen had created and how much he shocked them, in the end, they still had to face the benefits at hand. Zichen wasn't clear about this. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. After entering the third floor, his heart didn't waver too much because his goal was to enter the fourth floor. After Zichen entered the third floor, an old man walked out of the thatched cottage on the mountain peak. He was the mountain lord and spent most of his time in seclusion. It was very rare for him to come out this time. He came to the edge of the mountain peak and gazed into the distance with his deep eyes. At the same time, the indifferent mirror spirit straightened its posture and looked at Zichen, who had entered the third floor. The battle spirit's appearance on the second floor wasn't his intention. It had appeared on its own accord. From the looks of it, the only descender who was worthy of having a battle spirit appear was Zichun. The battle spirit was a type of holy talisman technique called the spirit summoning technique. It would usually appear on the third floor, but this time, it had appeared on the second floor. What was waiting for Zichun on the third floor? The mirror spirit was also curious. Zichun arrived at the third floor. It didn't seem any different from the first two floors. He didn't see any danger at first glance. He casually chose a direction and walked forward. He didn't know what was on this floor, but he knew his goal. That was to enter the final floor. The Mountain Lord, who had been paying attention to this scene, couldn't help but change his expression when he saw Zichun advance. At the same time, the lazy mirror spirit also stood up. There was a trace of disbelief in its eyes. In its line of sight, as Zichun advanced, those powerful existences that might encounter Zichun all scattered and distanced themselves. Chapter 3859. Many people in the Sagely Mountain City were cashing in on their rewards. Zichun had successfully ascended the third floor. It had been a series of twists and turns. Fortunately, although there was much suspense, the outcome did not change. Those who believed in Zichun had all gained a lot. They were all grinning from ear to ear. Among them, the Shishan brothers had gained the most. After all, the two of them had always believed in Zichun. Moreover, they had bet heavily on Zichun every time. After cashing in on their rewards, the Shishan brother smiled and said, "Continue to bet that Lord Zichun will enter the fourth floor." For a moment, many people looked at the Shishan brother. After all, after the third floor was the final floor. There were very few people who could reach this floor. Previously, many people had stopped while they were ahead. The Shishan brother did not care about the gazes around him. He continued, "Bet that Lord Zichun will ascend to the next floor." The being in charge of placing the bet took a deep look at Shishan's younger brother before placing the bet for him. However, at this moment, the person's expression suddenly changed. He said, "Zichun can no longer be placed." "What? Can no longer be placed?" The Shishan brother was stunned. He said, "Did you make a mistake? What about the others? Can they still place their bets?" Suddenly, a burst of exclamations came from outside the gambling den. It seemed that everyone had seen something extremely shocking. The Shishan brothers vaguely heard Zichun's name. They immediately ran out of the gambling den. When they arrived outside the gambling den, they looked up at the sky. After seeing the scene on the screen, their expressions changed. On the third floor, wherever Zichun passed, those powerful holy symbol beasts would dodge in advance as if they could predict the future. A very safe path was opened for Zichun. The city was in an uproar. The Shishan brothers finally understood why Zichun's bets were closed. All the holy symbol beasts deliberately avoided him. Zichun would have no problem reaching the fourth floor. How could they place their bets? Were they supposed to bet that he would give up? This situation was similar to Zichun obtaining the recognition of the Four Mountains. This was the first time something like this had happened, and it was also unprecedented. The crowd was in an uproar. No one understood what was going on. In fact, even Zichun himself did not understand why there was no danger along the way. This made him feel a little uneasy. Because there was no danger, it meant that the opportunity had passed by. What's going on? On the St. Talisman Mountain, the hearts of the elders were filled with doubt. This was because this situation was too unusual. Lian went to Mirror Spirit again to ask about this. Unexpectedly, the Mirror Spirit shook her head, indicating that she didn't know either. Lian obviously didn't believe it, but he couldn't question the Mirror Spirit, so he could only go back. In fact, he had really wronged Mirror Spirit this time. He really didn't know about the current situation. Although he could see everything, it did not mean that he could understand it. Furthermore, the sacred mountain was also an independent existence with its own thoughts and soul, even though it could not communicate with others normally. Along the way, Zichun saw mountains, rivers, and jagged rocks, but he didn't see any danger. This made him more and more vigilant as he went deeper. After all, it had been peaceful for too long. Perhaps he would encounter a terrifying storm as soon as he appeared. However, this time, Zichun was no longer worried that the danger would come from the descenders. Instead, He was worried about the sacred mountain itself. He walked for 4 hours. During this time, he didn't see a single Saint Talisman beast, so naturally, he didn't encounter any danger. The more he walked, the less confidence Zichen felt. He began to doubt himself. Did he go in the wrong direction? For a moment, he even wondered if he should go back the way he came. Zichen couldn't see the entire world, but the people outside could. They also saw Zichen's hesitation and vigilance. They knew that this was a completely unnecessary expression and that they could just keep moving forward. However, Zichen didn't know that. At the same time, in the Sacred Mountain gambling house, someone suggested that Zichen continue to bet. The reason was that Zichen was too vigilant and might really lose his qualifications because of his paranoia. This senseless and even ignorant suggestion naturally wouldn't be accepted. If the gambling house really opened like this, it was likely that the Holy Mountain gambling house would lose everything in just one round. Zichen was indeed vigilant, but that was only a short delay. By the time he reacted, he would definitely be on the 4th floor. Not only was this suggestion rejected, but the person who proposed it also received a torrent of curses. After several hours, Zichen still didn't encounter any danger. His expression couldn't help but change. He cried out involuntarily, "It's an illusion formation. It's definitely an illusion formation." When they heard such a confident tone, laughter rang out from the city. Since they had a complete view of the situation, they looked at Zichen as if they were looking at a fool. A day passed just like that. During this day, Zichen was constantly suspicious and displayed his cautious nature to the fullest. However, after seeing that there was no danger, he decided to not think about it and just walk around. Another day later, Zichen arrived at a huge canyon. There were many canyons here, and they gave him a faint feeling of unease. If he had a choice, he would definitely avoid this canyon. But at that moment, he saw a ray of light. That light was like a crack, or perhaps a passage. It seemed to be a passage to the next floor. Zichen was very surprised that he could find this place so smoothly, but his mood also became heavy. After all, he had gained nothing on this floor, and he hadn't even encountered any danger. Then what was waiting for him in front of this place? It was impossible to stop moving forward. Zichen took a deep breath, then raised his head to look at the sides of the canyon and walked forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. He didn't walk quickly, but his steps were steady and his mind was tense. He was on guard against every corner of his surroundings. There were still no abnormalities in his surroundings until Zichen had walked nearly half of the distance. With Zichen's current cultivation realm, he would need roughly 3 breaths to cross the next half of the distance. If he displayed his maximum speed, 2 breaths would be enough. Zichen took a deep breath and mobilized his soul power. But immediately after, the circulation of soul power stopped, and Zichen exhaled again. Holy rune beasts appeared in the upper part of the canyon. They were huge, as if mountains had appeared out of thin air. Shadows fell from above, and the breathing of those holy rune beasts formed waves of wind that swept down from above and swept through the canyon. The holy rune beasts that couldn't be seen previously appeared one by one, and there were quite a number of them. Zichen stopped and stood there motionlessly, like a person who was pretending to be dead. Those holy rune beasts didn't move either, and they just looked down at Zichen. There were many holy rune beasts, and they were very powerful, but Zichen didn't sense any killing intent from them. This made him a little hesitant. Both sides were in a stalemate for dozens of breaths, during which Zichen's entire body was drenched in cold sweat. Those beasts still didn't move. Zichen took a deep breath and walked forward. This required a lot of courage. Those holy rune beasts above were still quietly looking at Zichen, and their gazes followed Zichen's movements, but they still didn't attack. Zichen walked very slowly, even slower than before. Step by step, he walked to the entrance of the 4th level with great pressure. The entire Sagely Mountain City was in an uproar again. It was obvious that Zichen was going to pass through the 3rd level without any danger and enter the final level. Isn't this too smooth? Chapter 3860. A light appeared abruptly in front of Zichen. Zichen took the opportunity to retreat. In fact, he was already prepared for a change. As he retreated, the soul power around him began to surge, and the long rod appeared in his hand. However, when he saw the thing in front of him clearly, his expression changed. It wasn't a danger, but a floating talisman pin that emitted a bright light. Looking at the talisman pin, Zichun felt that it was somewhat familiar. Almost subconsciously, he took out his holy talisman pin, Unfathomable. Unfathomable was emitting light, as if it had been emitting light ever since it came here. Now that it was in Zichun's hand, Unfathomable began to tremble. At the same time, the light in front of him also began to tremble. A cheerful mood pervaded the air. The unfathomable pin in Zichun's hand came from the Holy Thunder Clan. It was said that it was used by the Hall Master back then, and its origin was unknown. Right now, this holy talisman pin called Unfathomable was actually resonating with the holy talisman pin in front of him. How incredible was that? At this moment, a question appeared in Zichun's mind. Could Unfathomable come from this place? Could it be that the Hall Master back then had also come to this world? Just as Zichun was puzzled, the holy talisman pin in front of him immediately flew towards Zichun and disappeared into Unfathomable. So that's how it is. On the mountain peak, the mountain master let out a sigh. He finally understood the reason for the abnormality. Then, he was very emotional. I didn't expect to see Unfathomable again one day. Unfathomable mystery is complete. However, if you encountered Unfathomable on the 3rd level, what about the 4th level? What will you encounter if you reach the heaven stage without any obstacles? At this moment, the mountain master was full of anticipation for Zichun's journey to the heaven stage. So it's this. Mirror Spirit also saw this scene. As the most ancient existence in the Holy Mountain, he naturally knew about Unfathomable and Unfathomable. It was just that he didn't pay much attention to it before, but now he truly sensed the aura of Unfathomable. The combination of Unfathomable and Unfathomable was complete Unfathomable. Some information entered Zichun's sea of consciousness. It was information regarding the mysterious and unfathomable. At the moment, the sacred talisman brush in Zichun's hand was truly complete. The light it emitted disappeared, and the patterns on its surface dimmed once again, as if it had truly become simple and unadorned. Zichun held onto the mysterious and unfathomable stone staircase. The staircase leading to the heavens was right in front of him. He inclined his head and glanced at the two sides of the canyon. Those powerful holy talisman beasts that were looking down at Zichun earlier were all lowering their heads and prostrating themselves on the ground. This was a form of respect for the mysterious and, at the same time, a form of respect for Zichun. Because from this moment on, the mysterious and unfathomable belonged to Zichun. At the same time, when the people in the Sagely Mountain City saw the actions of all the holy symbol beasts, they finally understood why the holy symbol beast had made way for Zichun. This scene shocked the world. Under such circumstances, which holy talisman beast would dare to attack Zichun? Zichun put away the sacred talisman brush, but those powerful holy talisman beasts were still prostrating themselves on the ground. Zichun walked forward and smoothly stepped into the 4th level. This was the last level of the Holy Talisman Mountain, also known as the Heavens. Zichun, who had reached this level, was qualified to become an honorary elder of the Holy Talisman Mountain. This represented powerful and limitless potential. After reaching the 4th level, what appeared in front of Zichun was no longer a forest, but a huge and mysterious space. There was nothing in this space, so naturally, there was no danger. Zichun was slightly startled. This space wasn't big, and it was like a small room. He could see everything with a single glance, but there was nothing inside. Although the same situation had occurred on the 3rd level, at least there was still a way to go. There was no way to go now, and there was nothing in front of him. Just as Zichun was puzzled and didn't know what to do, an old voice suddenly rang out in this space. Carefully sense everything, and you will find what you want. This was an unfamiliar voice, one that Zichun had never heard before. He guessed that it should be the voice of the Holy Mountain. This made him happy. If he carefully sensed, he would find what he wanted. Right now, what Zichun wanted the most was the Dark Ghost Devouring Soul technique. Therefore, he closed his eyes without hesitation and began to sketch the image of the Dark Ghost Devouring Soul technique in his mind. A formless wave of soul power spread out and filled the surroundings. In the Holy Mountain City, Zichen's bets were no longer open, and he was the first person to reach the 4th level. Therefore, everyone was looking at him at this moment. Not many people had seen the 4th level of the St. Talisman Mountain before. Hence, everyone's eyes were glued to the scene before them. However, none of them had heard the old voice. They only saw Zichen close his eyes and then quickly open them again. It was as if he had made a wish, and then a ray of light appeared. Cries of surprise rang out in the surroundings. Obviously, no one had expected the 4th level to be so mysterious. There was no need to spend any effort to obtain a reward. When he saw the ray of light, Zichen's eyes couldn't help but light up, because the opportunity had appeared. This is the dark ghost devouring soul technique? He became excited and walked towards the ray of light in front of him. When he arrived in front of the ray of light, he slowly stretched out his hand and carefully touched the ray of light, wanting to keep it. His fingers passed through it, as if he had touched the clouds. Zichen was stunned. He tried again, but his hand passed through the ray of light again and again. He couldn't take it away at all. What's going on? Zichen's heart was filled with confusion. Everyone in the city who saw this scene were also puzzled. Can't take it away? How is this possible? Wu Yud was in disbelief. Even Li's expression changed. It shouldn't be like this. It seems that this brat is too vicious and merciless, which made the holy mountain unhappy. Therefore, he can't take away what belongs to him. On the holy talisman mountain, an old man sneered. In order to revive those descenders that Zichen had killed, every single one of them had suffered great losses. Now that they saw that Zichen couldn't take away what belonged to him, they were naturally happy in their hearts. Zichen's attempts were fruitless. The old voice from before didn't appear to warn him. This made Zichen a little anxious. He used his soul power again and wanted to put it away, but it was still useless. Could it be that this isn't the dark ghost devouring soul technique? This thought appeared in Zichen's heart, and he couldn't help but feel a little depressed. He took out the mysterious holy talisman brush and pointed forward. Since this was the holy talisman mountain, it naturally required the means of a holy talisman master. It was still useless. It was the same several times in a row. Zichen shook his head. This was too frustrating. In the next moment, he formed a seal with his hands and soul power circulated between his palms. Under the dumbfounded gazes of everyone, he summoned a small beast. Chapter 3861. The ghost wasn't big, but it was very agile and cute. As soon as it appeared, it followed Zichen's instructions and flew towards the light in front of it. It was obvious that it wanted to devour the light. At this moment, there were endless discussions in the city. Because Zichen had received the recognition of the 4 mountains, this meant that Zichen must have a mutated beast that was recognized by the sacred beast mountain. Could it be this one? But what method did he use to summon it? No one could guess. However, even though Zichen had made up his mind to let the ghost devour the light, it didn't succeed. Just like his body, the ghost passed through it like an unreal cloud. How could this be? Zichen was puzzled. This was the 4th level of the sacred talisman mountain. The light ball was undoubtedly the biggest opportunity. Why couldn't he get it even though he saw it? Just as Zichen was frowning, the voice from before sounded again. This is the sacred talisman mountain. Everything is related to the sacred talisman. Perhaps you can try using the sacred talisman art. As soon as this sentence was said, Zichen's eyes lit up. He obviously had an idea. 12 sacred talismans appeared in front of him. They were the ghost spirit's sacred talismans. He activated them without hesitation. The 12 ghosts flew towards the light ball in front of them. Zichen stared ahead nervously. The 12 ghosts came into contact with the light ball. They didn't pass through it anymore. Instead, they came into contact with something real. As if they were attacking a living thing, the 12 ghosts worked together to break down the light ball that Zichen couldn't touch. They turned it into pure energy and returned to Zichen's consciousness. Zichen could clearly feel the growth of his soul. Clearly, this was an opportunity to increase his soul power. However, compared to the mysterious 3rd level, it was still lacking. This shouldn't be. The 4th level's opportunity was obviously greater than the 3rd level's. Zichen suddenly felt something. He immediately took out the mysterious talisman and started to draw talismans. It was the ghost spirit's sacred talisman. One ghost spirit after another appeared in the sky. There were a total of 9 of them. On the holy talisman paper, it was as if they were real. They were vivid and lifelike, a huge contrast from before. Moreover, 9 was Zichen's limit. Under careful observation, the ghost spirit's sacred talisman had undergone an earth-shattering change, and its power had increased by leaps and bounds. Only then was it worthy of the great fortuitous encounter at the 4th level of the Sage Talisman Mountain. However, in the eyes of others, Zichun was not worthy of the title of Heaven Rank Level 4 by merely obtaining such a reward. After the underworld ghost had appeared, it had been lying on Zichen's shoulder. Zichun didn't let it dissipate. After putting away the ghost spirit's sacred talisman, a passage appeared in front of Zichun. He had already obtained all the rewards for the 4th floor, so this was naturally the exit. Zichun stepped forward and left this place. In the next moment, Zichun appeared on the peak of the mountain. Clouds and mist rolled around him. Under the illumination of the sun, the light changed. It was magnificent, like a fairyland. This is the peak of the Saint Talisman Mountain. While Zichun was looking around curiously, he heard an old voice. It was the same voice that had reminded him twice before. Zichun turned around and saw an old man. It was the master of the Sage Talisman Mountain. He bowed at once. "Thank you for your help, sir." The master waved his hand, indicating that Zichun didn't need to be so polite. He just looked at Zichun in silence. Zichun was not used to the silent atmosphere. He asked at once, "Sir, what can I do for you?" The master came back to his senses. "I don't have anything to tell you. I just hope that you can come to the Sage Talisman Mountain after this test so that we can have a good chat." If it was just a chat, of course, there would be no problem. Zichun nodded. The master waved his sleeve and a passage appeared in front of him. "Go ahead. The test is not over yet. We can talk after it is." When Zichun was about to leave, the master suddenly said, "Your pet seems to be different." Zichun scratched his head. "It's not a pet. It's my Sage Talisman." The master smiled. "If you want to be recognized by the Sage Talisman Mountain, you must have your own pet. The treasures on the Sage Talisman Mountain are all for pets." Zichun nodded as if he understood. He cupped his fists and bowed to the mountain chieftain before stepping into the passageway. He went back to where he came from. But this time, the 4 passages around him had been reduced to 3. Clearly, he could only go to each passage once. After some hesitation, Zichun decided to go to the Sage Talisman Mountain first. On the one hand, he wanted to know if his phantom was a pet. On the other hand, he was worried about Noah. After all, Noah had been recognized by the Sage Talisman Mountain. Zichun stepped into the Sage Talisman Mountain and reached the 1st level. However, many people in the Sage Talisman Mountain city noticed that Zichun was still not allowed to bet on him. This was a pity. After all, based on the strength that Zichun had demonstrated, it would not be a problem for him to reach the 2nd level. Many people wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make a fortune, but their hopes were dashed. After arriving at the Sage Talisman Mountain, Zichun noticed a problem. The phantom that could disappear and reappear at will could no longer be put away. It was as if the phantom had become a real pet. Su Ping's expression changed. He wondered if the nether ghost was really a pet. But at the moment, his top priority was to find Noah. Of course, Noah had not been eliminated. He looked at the ghost on his shoulder and asked, "Can you sense the location of Noah's aura?" Noah shook its head. It could not, but it could sense the presence of the emerald-eyed jade fire beast. "Let's go." So, the man and the beast went to look for Noah at once. As far as the 4 mountains were concerned, the Sage Talisman Mountain was the slowest. Many people who should have reached the 2nd level had been lingering on the 1st level. Among those people, there was a very strange person, Chen Kai. Compared to the other people who had pets of varying strength, he was the only one who had reached the 2nd level without any pets. He was the first one who had cheated so obviously and acted so righteously. After coming here, he had been looking for Noah, or rather, looking for his emerald-eyed jade fire beast. In the beginning, Yui had accompanied him in his search. However, after a long time of fruitless searching, he left for the 2nd floor. After all, compared to Chen Kai, he had another way to go. Although Chen Kai stayed behind, he wasn't fighting alone. Instead, he was leading a group of people to look for Noah. Time passed, day after day. Noah and the blue-eyed jade fire beast were discovered time and time again. Battles broke out from time to time. Although they were heavily injured, they managed to avoid danger. Until this time, Noah was found and surrounded. Noah, who was covered in wounds, looked at the emerald-eyed jade fire beast that was also covered in wounds and said, "If you can't make it this time, you can leave on your own. Don't go to Chunkai anymore. He is holding a grudge against you. If you continue to follow him, you will have a hard time in the future. Maybe he will use some secret method on you. Just stay on the Sage Talisman Mountain. You will be quite free." The emerald-eyed jade fire beast was an intelligent creature. Naturally, it could understand Noah's words. However, it recalled what Zichun had said to it before. If it could help Noah escape this time, the two of them would be able to live and die together in the future. On the other hand, if it rebelled, Zichun would find a way to find it and kill it no matter where it went. That sentence carried a lot of weight, especially since Zichun had been recognized by the Four Mountains. The emerald-eyed jade fire beast had been following Zichun for a long time and knew a lot about the Sage Talisman Mountain. It knew very well what that meant. Therefore, the emerald-eyed jade fire beast had been relying on its instincts to escape with Noah while fighting. That was why it had been able to persist until now. But at the moment, it could not go on. Chapter 3862. The leader was Chunkai. Aside from him, everyone else was accompanied by exotic beasts. One of them looked like a giant rat. It was a tracking beast. Although it wasn't of a high grade and its bloodline wasn't that pure, it was still thanks to its efforts that they were able to find the jade-eyed jade fire beast time and time again. As the group began to close in, Chunkai looked at the wounded jade-eyed jade fire beast with a trace of regret in his eyes. "Why did you have to do this? Abandoning you last time was just a temporary measure. I've been thinking of ways to bring you back." Hearing Chunkai's self-blaming tone and the regret on his face, the jade-eyed jade fire beast became even more determined. This was because it had followed Chunkai for a long time and knew what his nature was like. Regret? Self-blame? That was impossible. When such an expression appeared, it meant that he had begun to put on an act. Afterwards, the person who made him put on an act would have to pay a great price. The jade-eyed jade fire beast knew that Chunkai wouldn't kill it, but once he brought it back, all sorts of restrictions on its soul would be unavoidable. It was even possible that its soul would be completely muddled and turn into a killing machine. At this moment, it had already made up its mind. If it couldn't escape, it had to die here. Chunkai didn't know what the jade-eyed jade fire beast was thinking. At this moment, he looked at Noah and said indifferently, "You stole what was mine. Logically speaking, you should die. However, I'm in a good mood after seeing the jade-eyed jade fire beast today. Bring the jade-eyed jade fire beast here and hand it to me. I can spare your life." Noah's gaze swept around. All he saw were cold gazes. He looked at Chunkai and only replied with two words, "Tornado." Soul power surged out from his body, forming a storm of soul power. It was as if there were countless sharp blades crisscrossing within it, exploding with clanging sounds. Faced with the encirclement, he took the initiative to attack. Roar! With a heaven-shaking roar, the emerald-eyed jade fire beast's body began to expand. Its entire body began to emit a jade-like luster. However, the original wound had also become a ghastly sight due to the increase in size. Seeing this, a cold killing intent flashed in Chunkai's eyes. He knew that the jade-eyed jade fire beast had really betrayed him. He waved his hand and coldly said, "Kill." The others who had arrived in the area all used their most powerful techniques. The same went for the exotic beasts that were capable of attacking. The battle erupted. Whether it was for Noah or the jade-eyed fire beast, this should be the last battle of their lives. Therefore, the battle was exceptionally intense and tragic. Powerful energy rumbled, and intense shockwaves spread out. On the battlefield, Noah, who was covered in blood, looked around and said, "You can go. Every one of you can survive." The emerald-eyed jade fire beast shook its head. The man and beast had yet to achieve a true telepathic connection and could only communicate in the simplest ways. But the firm look in the emerald-eyed jade fire beast's eyes said it all. Noah sighed. There is no need for both of them to die here. As long as they are alive, there is hope. The emerald-eyed jade fire beast was well aware of the situation it was in. Its eyes became even more resolute, and the aura surging around its body became even more berserk. This represented the determination to fight to the death. Noah was also infected by this atmosphere. He laughed and said, "If that's the case, then let's have a good fight. Even if I die, I won't let them have an easy time." A hurricane appeared around him and spread out in all directions like a storm of destruction. Seeing this, Chun Kai's face became even gloomier. Boundless killing intent surged in his eyes. Tear this fellow to pieces. He wouldn't kill the emerald-eyed jade fire beast because it was the key to joining Sacred Beast Mountain. But Noah had to die. And after this, he would use a secret technique to suppress the emerald-eyed jade fire beast's soul, even if it meant sacrificing some of its potential. At this moment, a muffled collision sound came from behind. A person cried out in alarm as he was sent flying. Everyone immediately turned around and saw a person holding a staff rushing over. It was Zichun. Under Yugue's lead, he had rushed all the way here and just happened to see this battle. He also felt the determination of the man and beast to die. For Zichun, this was enough. He believed that after this life and death battle, Noah and the emerald-eyed jade fire beast would establish a true relationship of trust. So, he showed up and made his move. Looking at those existences who turned around, Zichun said coldly, "If you leave now, I can spare your lives. Otherwise, all of you will die." This was a threat, but it was also a fact. They wanted to kill Zichun's friends, and Zichun was willing to give them a way out. It had to be said that he was very benevolent. However, the regrettable thing was that although these people knew that Zichun was talented, they had never seen him in action. Naturally, they didn't know how powerful Zichun was. Therefore, these people thought that Zichun was bluffing. One of them said coldly, "How dare you threaten us? Are you tired of living? Just as well, killing one is killing two is also killing." Thus, the person who spoke immediately charged at Zichun. His exotic beast was the first to rush over. In front of Zichun, a light flashed and Yugue disappeared from his shoulder. In the next moment, Yugue appeared in front of the exotic beast. Its small body immediately swelled up and swallowed the exotic beast in one gulp. The existence who was brimming with killing intent was stunned. Obviously, he didn't expect such a scene to happen. "I gave you a chance, but unfortunately, you didn't know how to cherish it. So, your chance is gone." Zichun's cold voice rang in the ears of the human soul stage expert. His killing intent had been ignited, and he didn't show any mercy. The staff came crashing down with a mighty aura. The human soul stage expert was reduced to a dead life. Next, Zichun displayed his martial arts. With a staff and a shield in one hand, he charged into the crowd. This was the second time the martial arts appeared in front of everyone. Once again, he displayed his invincible side. Powerful energy fluctuations caused lives to disappear one after another. Zichun displayed unparalleled combat strength, specializing in killing soul stage experts. Yugue was also powerful, specializing in devouring exotic beasts that were qualified to enter the Holy Beast Mountain. At this moment, those who saw all of this understood why Zichun could be recognized by the Holy Beast Mountain. That pet was too powerful. When the others saw this, they immediately scattered and ran away. Chun Kai, who had always been the leader, ran the fastest. In Zichun's hand, soul power circulated and a long spear appeared. This was the manifestation of his martial arts. Chapter 38-63. Poof! Chun Kai paused in midair. The spear formed by his soul power had pierced through his opponent's body. Chun Kai slowly turned around and darted a glance at Zichun. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and disbelief. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't utter a single word. His body fell to the ground, and he lost all signs of life. By then, there were no more enemies around. Zichun had demonstrated unparalleled combat strength. Once again, the world learned about the strength of combat skills, or rather, the shock combat skill. At the very least, judging by the current situation, Zichen's strength was no less than Shangluan's. Besides, Shangluan happened to be on the Beast Mountain as well. Perhaps the two of them could meet again and have a fierce battle. Noah and the Jade Fire Beast were ready to fight to the death. They didn't expect that Zichen would show up and destroy the enemy in such a domineering manner. Zichen's appearance was too surprising, but it was also a great relief for the two of them. The Jade Fire Beast looked at the underworld ghost. This was the first time it had seen the underworld ghost. The underworld ghost wasn't large in size. After devouring so many beasts, it didn't change at all. It had to admit that this was amazing. Apart from curiosity, the Jade Fire Beast was also in awe. At the same time, the Jade Fire Beast understood why Zichen had asked it to follow Noah. Zichen walked over. The underworld ghost jumped back onto Zichen's shoulder. It looked very obedient and cute. It was poles apart from the previous powerful being. "Come, let's go to the second floor," Zichen said. Noah nodded and followed Zichen to the second floor. On the Beast Mountain, there were opportunities for the growth of beasts. There were also some beasts that lived there. It was a place of opportunity for pets. Along the way, the Jade Fire Beast would devour some crystals, but the underworld ghost didn't care for them at all. Whenever there were exotic beasts blocking their path, Noah and the Jade Fire Beast would be the ones to deal with them. Unless it was a dangerous situation, Zichen wouldn't make a move. However, the deeper they went, the worse the condition of the Jade Fire Beast became. This made Zichen and Noah very puzzled. It was pressure, the kind of pressure that belonged to a superior being. This was Yugue's explanation. As for the exotic beasts that came here, aside from the strength of their masters, they also had to rely on their own potential. The higher one's potential, the further they would be able to walk. Right now, the Emerald Eye Jade Fire Beast condition wasn't right. That was also a sign that its potential was about to reach its limit. This was also the condition that most people who came to the Sacred Beast Mountain should be in. Those who could enter the second floor were already very good. As for those who could enter the third floor, there were only a few, and practically no one could enter the fourth floor. It wasn't because of humans, but because of the potential of the exotic beasts. Zichen glanced at Noah. It seemed that this was the end of his path. At this moment, Yugue, who was lying on Zichen's shoulder, suddenly turned around and looked to the side. There was a flicker of light in its eyes. Although Yugue hadn't said anything, Zichen knew that its eyes could see things that ordinary people couldn't. For example, the invisible Yuan from last time. Right now, Yugue's eyes were different. Naturally, it had discovered something else. Zichen turned around, but he didn't find anything. Noah, who was walking in front, stopped and looked at Zichen in confusion. "What's wrong?" Zichen's hand flashed and a long staff appeared in his hand. He, who rarely attacked along the way, began to gather his strength as if he was facing a great enemy. Noah was even more confused because he didn't find anything. He turned to look at the Emerald Eye Jade Fire Beast, but it also shook its head, indicating that it didn't know where Zichen's vigilance came from. At this moment, Zichen's body soared into the sky, and the long staff in his hand began to emit light. Countless lightning bolts surrounded it, and a tyrannical aura was released. In the next moment, Zichen's body descended, and the long staff fiercely smashed towards the ground. There was a loud bang. A huge crack appeared on the ground, and a deafening beast roar came from the crack. A giant beast with yellow scales all over its body appeared from the ground and pounced towards Zichen. Zichen retreated, and the long staff in his hand rose again. Lightning flashed on the staff, and countless lightning bolts bloomed. The staff fell again. Boom! The strange beast's body soared into the sky and smashed towards the ground, falling into the crack again. At this moment, countless exclamations sounded in the Sagely Mountain City, because the thing that Zichen had shaken out from the ground was a treasure mountain beast. Just like its name, it was a true treasure mountain. In addition to its extraordinary body, the beast core that formed in its body was a treasure that all strange beasts yearned to obtain. However, this kind of treasure mountain beast was extremely rare even on the Sagely Beast Mountain. In the eyes of the crowd, Zichen was really lucky to have encountered it. The Emerald Eye Jade Fire Beast did not recognize the treasure mountain beast, but due to its instinctive attraction, Its eyes began to shine when it saw the Treasure Mountain Beast. As the first person to discover the Treasure Mountain Beast, its expression did not change much. In its eyes, the Treasure Mountain Beast was just a delicious food. It could eat it, but it did not matter if it did not eat it. It transmitted its thoughts to Zichun. Zichun understood what Yugue meant, and before the Treasure Mountain Beast rushed out from the ground, he turned around and said, "I'll leave it to you guys." He retreated with the staff, and Noah was slightly stunned. The emerald-eyed jade fire beast immediately rushed forward. The Treasure Mountain Beast was extremely attractive to it, and it could not wait. Zichun retreated to a distance and looked around. The commotion caused by this battle was huge, and he was afraid that it would attract many people. Sure enough, in just a short moment, many figures flew over from afar. After seeing the mountain treasure beast, everyone's eyes lit up. Zichun held the staff in his hand, looked at the people in the distance, and said indifferently, "If you want to snatch it, come at me." Seeing Zichun standing guard at the side, many people's expressions changed. Because Zichun was too famous, it was impossible not to attract attention. For a moment, everyone hesitated. One of the brawny men gritted his teeth and said, "If we miss such a great opportunity, we will be struck by lightning. If you guys don't want to go, I will." Thus, he rushed forward. Seeing this, the others also had a great idea in their hearts. However, after Zichun's staff fell, everyone's idea disappeared in an instant. With just one strike, the brawny man was injured. With the second strike, the brawny man died. The beast that belonged to him was eaten by Yugue as food. This was not a battle of the same level at all. Zichun's battle strength deterred everyone. Many of them began to retreat, and some stayed in place, as if they were not satisfied and wanted to wait and see. Under the joint efforts of Noah and the emerald-eyed jade fire beast, the Treasure Mountain Beast was successfully killed, leaving behind a shining beast core. At this time, Sheng Luan, who had reached the third level, left the sacred beast mountain after obtaining the opportunity. Chapter 3864. The beast pellet was floating in the air, attracting many people's attention. Many beasts that had come to the Holy Talisman Mountain were envious. Their gazes were burning with desire. They couldn't help but move forward. Compared to those beasts, their masters were much more cautious. After witnessing how powerful Zichun was, they didn't dare to act rashly. They stopped their pets at once until the Jade Fire Beast got the opportunity. Unwilling to give up, they dispersed to look for opportunities on their own. The Jade Fire Beast took the beast pellet and its energy began to surge. Noah looked at Zichun and swallowed the words of gratitude that he wanted to say. He owed Zichun too much. A simple thank you was not enough. At the moment, he had to keep this favor in mind and return it when he had the chance in the future. They went deeper. Along the way, the Jade Fire Beast's energy had not stabilized, but the irresistible pressure from before had reduced its influence on the Jade Fire Beast. Roughly an hour later, the emerald-eyed Jade Fire Beast's body suddenly burned with flames. At the same time, a tyrannical aura was released from its body. Seeing this scene, Noah was stunned and worried. "This is the second awakening. It's a good thing," Zichun said. At the moment, the flames on the Jade Fire Beast were giving off a jade-like glow, which was very eye-catching. As Zichun had said, this was the second awakening, a real opportunity. The pressure on the first floor was nothing for the Jade Fire Beast. Therefore, they reached the third floor without a hitch. For the Jade Fire Beast, this was a miracle. And the creator of this miracle was the Mountain Treasure Beast. After arriving at the third floor, the suppressive aura that targeted exotic beasts became even more intense. The Jade Fire Beast once again felt uncomfortable, but to be able to reach this level, it was already at the highest level of the exotic beasts. Zichun wanted to go to the fourth floor, so he wouldn't stay here any longer. Noah didn't expect to go to the next floor either, so he stopped. The two parted ways, and Zichun went deeper. On the third level of the Sacred Beast Mountain, Yui was about to leave. Being able to reach this point was already his limit. As for reaching the fourth level, that was something he had never dreamed of. All of a sudden, he came to a halt because his pet beast had just sent him a message. This was a piece of information that he was very interested in. Thus, He decided to stop just as he was about to leave. He began to wait in place until the person he was waiting for appeared in front of him. The two of them faced each other from afar. Zichen looked at Yue in front of him. He was a little surprised, but he was more happy in his heart. That was because Yue had a shield on her, the companion spirit shield. Even Oli had said that with Yue's current battle strength, it was almost impossible to break through her defense. Yue looked at Zichen, who had suddenly stopped in front of her, and said, "You seem to have something that interests me." A falcon perched on Yue's shoulder. This was his pet beast, the golden eyes spirit falcon. Zichen smiled faintly and said, "What a coincidence. You have something that interests me as well." This tit-for-tat confrontation came so suddenly that the spectators in the city were caught off guard. However, it seemed like the two of them were going to fight. One was Yue with her companion spirit shield, while the other was the successor of the Tremor combat arts. What would happen when the two of them fight? Sure enough, in less than a quarter of an hour, Zichen's bets were opened again. The first bet was on whether he could enter the fourth floor, and the second bet was on the battle between Zichen and Yue. Currently, Zichen and Yue's odds were 1-1. However, not many people were betting on Zichen, even though he had displayed unparalleled battle strength along the way. In the Sagely Mountain City, Shishan's younger brother looked at his older brother and said, "Big brother, that Yue has an impenetrable defense. Are we still going to bet?" Many people had placed bets in the Sagely Mountain City this time, but not many had actually earned blue crystal coins. However, the Shishan brothers had made a huge profit. They were extremely famous this time. In the Sagely Mountain gambling house, a private room had been arranged for them. They could choose whatever they wanted to watch. Of course, the service fee was not small, but the service was definitely top-notch. However, the two brothers did not agree. They were used to being in the crowd, used to hearing the exclamations of others, as well as the shocked gazes of others. Because of their belief, they had been betting on Zichen and had reaped great rewards. However, the others were not optimistic about Zichen's chances. Take the current situation, for example. Although the two of them had yet to fight and the odds were the same, many people were betting on Yue. That was because that impenetrable defense was Yue's greatest reliance. Once she entered the Sacred Weapon Mountain and was baptized, Yue's shield would definitely rank in the top 100. This was an amazing ranking that would not change for hundreds of years. Shishan's older brother said in a deep voice, "Is there even a need to think? Of course it's Lord Zichen." Obviously, he had great confidence in Zichen, or rather, blind confidence. Shishan's younger brother also had confidence in Zichen, but the opponent this time was too unusual. He could not help but mutter in his heart. "Are you sure?" he asked again. Shishan's older brother said, "Who would have believed that Lord Zichen could create so many miracles along the way? The fourth mountain, the fourth mountain. This is unprecedented. Did you dare to think before it happened? What is Yue? It's just two mountains. How can he compare to the fourth mountain?" Shishan's younger brother nodded heavily at his elder brother's words, indicating that he understood. However, when he went to place his bet, the odds had changed. The odds for Zichen's victory were now 1-2. The odds had changed before the battle had even begun. It seemed that it was not only the people in the Sagely Mountain City who were betting, but the entire Sagely Mountain gambling house was not optimistic about Zichen's chances. Otherwise, with Zichen's fourth mountain potential, there was no way he would be beaten by Yue. However, this was obviously a good thing for Shishan's younger brother, because if Lord Zichen won, they would earn even more. As soon as Shishan's younger brother entered, someone immediately went up to greet him. There were not many people in the gambling house who did not know the two brothers. The other gamblers around also stared at Shishan's younger brother. He did not hide anything and directly said, "As usual, I still bet on Lord Zichen's victory." The crowd, who were originally filled with anticipation, started to hiss one after another. Even a fool could see that Zichen had no chance of winning in this battle. Why did Shishan's younger brother place such a bet? Was it on purpose? After the many Dark Horse incidents last time, especially after the Shangluan incident, everyone was much more careful when placing their bets. At the same time, Wu Yud looked at Oli and said, "Young master, I believe you this time. Let Zichen open the bet again. But can Zichen really win?" Oli said indifferently, Why are you talking so much nonsense? Won't we know when we see it? On the third level of the Sacred Beast Mountain, Zichen and Yue began to fight. Chapter 3865. Countless rays of light bloomed, and layers of ripples surged out, spreading out in all directions. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, Zichen's incomparably powerful staff was blocked by the associated spirit shield. The associated spirit shield was unscathed. The whole city was quiet for a moment, and then there was noise. Everyone immediately rushed to the gambling house, obviously wanting to take advantage of the fact that Zichen had not closed the bet and continued to bet. The odds for Yue remained unchanged, 1-to-1, which made those people very excited. But the odds for Zichen had reached 1-to-3. The people who bet were frantically betting on Yue. Obviously, they felt that Yue was bound to win. Wu Yud looked at Oli and said with some worry, "Young master, are you sure that Zichen can win? If something goes wrong, I'm afraid that the Holy Mountain Casino will really have a problem this time, because some people have already placed heavy bets on Yue." According to the current situation, while Zichen's odds were increasing, Yue's odds were decreasing, because the odds of winning were too great. But because they believed in Oli, Yue's odds had not changed. At present, the number of people betting on Yue had reached an extremely large number. Once Zichen was defeated, the Holy Mountain Casino would start to pay the compensation, which would inevitably hurt them. Originally, the Holy Mountain Casino did not need to do this, but because Wu Yud listened to Oli's words, and he was the one who took the pressure to deal with this matter, Oli said, "Just watch quietly. Anyway, it's already like this. What's the point of worrying so much?" Wu Yud was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. What did he mean by "it's already like this"? A violent roar came from the sky. It was the second confrontation between Zichen and Yue. Powerful energy surged in the sky, forming a terrifying wave that spread out. The staff in Zichen's hand glowed, and the lines on it were faintly discernible, releasing an even more terrifying aura. In front of Yue, the associated spirit shield released a watery light, and the staff's attacks were all blocked. He looked at Zichen and mocked, "Is this your strength? It doesn't match your arrogance." Zichen remained silent. The staff in his hand once again shone with a dazzling light, and a portion of the patterns on it lit up. Those who were familiar with Zichen would know that Zichen had used a lot of power and could be considered one of his trump cards. He stepped forward with his staff in hand. He raised his staff and brought it down. The afterimage he left behind in the sky was very clear, and there seemed to be a crack in the afterimage. This was Zichen's most powerful attack since his arrival. Facing this obviously terrifying strike, Yue gave an indifferent smile and raised the companion spirit shield in her hand. Countless rays of light fell from the spirit shield, forming a protective barrier. Yue was full of confidence in his spirit shield and had the intention of letting the world see how powerful and extraordinary it was. However, he felt that it was a pity that he had never encountered an enemy worthy of fighting. Right now, he could show the power of the spirit shield to the world. Another rumbling sound rang out, deafening to the ears, like waves of thunder. Even though it was only the sound coming from the light screen, many people in the city still felt uncomfortable. Many people covered their ears and revealed painful expressions. Suddenly, cries of alarm could be heard throughout the Sagely Mountain City. Another light screen appeared in the sky, but this one didn't show a person, only a mountain. A mountain that was shaking. The mountain was covered with weapons, emitting a dense silver light. This was the Sacred Weapon Mountain, but it was shaking on its own. All the weapons on the Sacred Weapon Mountain were releasing light. Such a phenomenon naturally meant that something big had happened. It's a summoning from the Sacred Weapon Mountain. Just as everyone was wondering why such a phenomenon had occurred on the Sacred Weapon Mountain, an old man who had lived for an unknown number of years suddenly shouted excitedly, "Only the appearance of a sacred soul weapon that can enter the soul weapon ranking will trigger the summoning of a sacred soul weapon." Back then, when that mysterious weapon appeared and challenged the Cloud Rain Sword, this happened. Hearing the old man's explanation, the surroundings were in an uproar. Clearly, this was because the Sacred Weapon Mountain had sensed Yue's companion spirit shield, causing the summoning power to appear. Looking at the battle in the sky again, Zichen's powerful attack was easily blocked by the companion spirit shield again. Behind the spirit shield, in the distorted light screen, Yue sneered. Now you know the difference between you and me, right? Even if you exhaust all your strength, you will definitely not be able to break through my defense. From the moment the battle began, you were destined to lose. Yue's words clearly reached the ears of many people in the city. In an instant, everyone was in an uproar, shouting loudly as they rushed into the gambling house. What followed was naturally a crazy bet. Because the sacred weapon mountain had already summoned a phenomenon, coupled with Yue's confident words, everyone believed in Yue without a doubt. At this moment, Yue's attention had far surpassed Shangluan's. Xishan's younger brother looked at his older brother and asked, "Big brother, Lord Zichen's odds are getting higher and higher. What should we do now?" Xishan's older brother said in a deep voice, "This is a good thing for us. Continue to bet. I believe that Lord Zichen will definitely be able to break through the defense of the tortoiseshell." At this moment, the battle broke out again, but the battle situation was not as optimistic as Xishan's older brother had said. No matter how powerful Zichen's combat power was, he was unable to break through the light shield's defense. Seeing that the attacks had failed one after another, everyone's confidence in Yue grew even more. After a series of powerful attacks, Yue and her light shield remained unscathed. On the other hand, Zichen's powerful attacks had caused him to expend quite a bit of energy. Yue looked at him and said indifferently, "When your strength is exhausted, it will naturally be the time for me to take your life. Is that so?" Zichen looked at Yue, his expression as calm as before. Several attacks did not pose any threat to Yue's light shield, nor did it seem to affect his mood. He said, "Seeing that there is no deep hatred between you and me, remove the ownership of your companion's spirit shield and hand it over. I can spare your life." "Are you crazy?" Yue looked at Zichen as if she was looking at an idiot. Zichen said calmly, "I don't have much patience, and I won't give you much time to consider. You dare to play with me? You're courting death." Yue said with an angry face, "This time, not only will I not let you go, but I will also kill your friend. I know that she has good things on her, and I won't let any of them go." Zichen glanced at the golden eyes spirit-seeking falcon on Yue's back. His calm eyes suddenly had a touch of coldness. "Since you've chosen the path of death, I'll fulfill your wish." Chapter 3866. After saying that, Zichen put away his strongest weapon and took out the holy talisman. Everyone was surprised because Zichen didn't take out the holy talisman brush, which had obviously become more powerful, but a piece of holy talisman paper. What was the use of these holy talisman papers at this time? Some people seemed to have thought of something, and their hearts skipped a beat. They had a bad feeling. Zichen looked at Yue and said indifferently, "I originally wanted to let you live, but since you're thinking about my friends, I'm sorry to tell you that you're going to die today." "Who doesn't know how to talk big?" Yue said disdainfully. "Don't worry, after I kill you, your friends will soon accompany you on the road. You won't be alone on the road ahead." Zichen had only taken out 9 holy talismans. Of course, he didn't care. Let alone 9. Even if there were 90 or even 900 holy talismans, he still wouldn't be afraid. At this moment, Zichen threw out the holy talisman paper in his hand. It was the ghost spirit holy talisman that had turned into 9 pieces after obtaining the 4th level of the holy talisman mountain. This was Zichen's greatest reliance. He believed that the ghost spirit holy talisman could break through the defense that he couldn't. The 9 saint talismans turned into 9 little ghosts. They were extremely agile, as if they were real creatures. Every transformation was real. Following Zichen's order, the 9 ghosts flew toward Yue. Seeing this scene, Yue's heart suddenly tightened. A fear that shouldn't have appeared in the depths of his heart suddenly appeared. It was as if these 9 insignificant things could really threaten him. The golden eyes spirit-seeking falcon that had been lying on his shoulder suddenly spread its wings and moved forward. It actually took the initiative to leave Yue's defense range and rushed toward the 9 ghosts. It seemed to have noticed something and wanted to take the initiative to attack. At this moment, the ghost on Zichen's shoulder also moved. It was like a bolt of black lightning, instantly arriving in front of the golden-eyed, spirit-seeking falcon. Its small claws immediately slapped toward the falcon's head. A loud slap sounded. The golden-eyed, spirit-seeking falcon's body flew diagonally and landed in the distance. In the battle between the two beasts, the golden-eyed, spirit-seeking falcon was at a disadvantage. No one was surprised by this. After all, the spirit-seeking falcon was not a combat-type beast. Its main function was to hunt for treasures. However, in the next moment, the golden-eyed, spirit-seeking falcon's actions were puzzling. After it landed and flew up, it did not return to Yu Yi's side. Instead, it flew directly into the distance. The scene caused an uproar among the crowd. That was because this kind of thing happened too often. The Sacred Beast Mountain was not only a place of opportunity for strange beasts, but also a place where many strange beasts lived. It could be considered a paradise of freedom. However, these strange beasts would usually leave quietly after their masters died in battle and return to the Sacred Beast Mountain. However, he did not expect that the golden-eyed, spirit-seeking falcon would run away at this time. Why was that? Everyone was puzzled. However, he soon got his answer. Under Yu Yi's smug expression, the 9 little ghosts ignored the powerful defense of the life-bound spirit shield and penetrated it, entering her sea of consciousness. Everyone who saw this scene cried out in surprise. An impenetrable defense was broken through just like that? Yu Yi stood there, motionless. The protective light formed by the life-bound spirit shield was still there, but it was much dimmer than before. Zichun did not make his next move. To deal with Yu Yi, the ghost spirit sacred talisman was enough. This was the greatest opportunity he had obtained on the sacred talisman mountain. The power of the 9 ghost spirit sacred talismans was beyond his imagination. The entire Sagely Mountain city became extremely quiet. In such a big city, there was no sound at all. Everyone's attention fell on Yu Yi. Their eyes were filled with anticipation and nervousness. As long as she escaped this calamity, Zichun, who did not have the ghost spirit sacred talisman, would be defeated without a doubt. Stand up. In the quiet city, someone shouted first. He was so excited that his voice was a little hoarse. No one knew how much he had bet on Yu Yi. Stand up. Stand up. The deafening voices suddenly rang out. Most of the people in the city began to cheer for Yu Yi. Among them, there was no lack of veteran forces who wanted to take this opportunity to make a fortune. After betting heavily on Yu Yi, they naturally did not want to see the scene of Yu Yi falling. In contrast, the Shishan brothers and a small number of other people shouted different slogans, but they were instantly drowned out by the loud voices. Wu Yud was very nervous. This concerned the fate of the Sagely Mountain gambling house. The deafening shouts also brought him great pressure. Yu Yi seemed to have heard everyone's support. Indeed, he did not fall. However, he was unable to launch any other attacks. The defensive light on the surface of his body was gradually dimming. At the same time, the brilliance of the life-bound spirit shield was also gradually fading. Zichun, who had been standing in the same spot, walked forward this time. Countless people's gazes followed Zichun's movements. He stood in front of Yu Yi. Yu Yi still did not make any other moves. In the city, Oli, who had been very calm all this time, suddenly became nervous. The tremor battle technique was indeed extraordinary, but the holy battle technique also had its unique points. In his opinion, if Zichun wanted to win, a powerful soul weapon was essential. Zichun's long rod seemed to be of extraordinary quality. If he took Yu Yi's shield, then the next time he faced Sheng Luan, his chances of winning would naturally be higher. In the image, Zichun stretched out his hand and landed on the life-bound spirit shield, whose luster had completely faded. Under countless incredulous gazes, he took away the life-bound spirit shield. He took it for himself. The city was in an uproar, and there were also shouts of disappointment. The Shishan brothers' cheers were drowned out again. From Yu Yi's sea of consciousness, a ray of light flew out and entered Zichun's mind. Yu Yi's body, which had been standing all this time, fell down. The crowd's last hope was gone. Some people thought of the departure of the golden-eyed spirit-seeking falcon. Perhaps at that time, the other party had acutely sensed Yu Yi's fate, so it left her in advance and chose freedom. Zichun held the life-bound spirit shield in his hand and carefully sensed the spirit shield. After probing it with his soul power again and again, he did not find any abnormalities. He refined the spirit shield on the spot, a shield and a rod. This time, he was really together. As long as he nourished them, Zichun's battle strength would increase again. Zichun had already thought of the next place, which was to go to Saint Weapon Mountain and let his 2 soul weapons be baptized and improve their quality again. Perhaps, the light shield in his hand could still be ranked in the top 100 after losing UE. But before that, Zichun had to enter the 4th level. Chapter 3867. The city was in an uproar. No one had expected this result, and no one could accept it. Yuyi's unbreakable defense was broken by a few holy runes. How was that possible? Could it be that those saint talismans could ignore defense? No one could believe it, even though the truth was right in front of their eyes. That was because they believed that many people had invested a lot. Yet, the result before their eyes was unable to satisfy them in the slightest. It even made many people feel despair. If it weren't for the fact that there was an unshakable force behind the Sacred Mountain Casino, some people would have even tried to attack the casino to recoup their losses. This time, the Sacred Mountain Casino had made a huge profit. By the time the others came back to their senses and were ready to place more bets on Zichun, Zichun had closed his bets again. He had reached the entrance to the 4th floor. Next, he only needed to defeat the mountain beast guarding the entrance to reach the 4th floor. It wasn't that the others couldn't reach the 4th floor, but that their pets couldn't. Judging by the current situation, the rank of the underworld ghost was quite high. What appeared in front of Zichun was a huge beast guarding the entrance. Seeing Zichun's arrival, it let out an angry roar filled with warning. Zichun took out his long rod. As the rod glowed, Zichun smashed it down. With a loud noise, the mountain beast that was blocking the way fell. That was Zichun's strength. Only someone like UE, who had a strong defense, could withstand his attack. The passageway to the 4th floor opened. Zichun walked in under everyone's watchful eyes. The environment of the 4th floor was no different from that of the Holy Rune Mountain. The only difference was that there was no longer one ball of light in front of Zichun. Instead, there were more than a dozen floating balls of light. Those balls of light were of different sizes. Some of them contained a small beast that seemed to be sealed inside. Others were pure energy. There was no danger around, which meant that Zichun could pick anything he wanted. In one of the balls of light, there was an emerald-eyed jade fire beast. However, compared to the one Zichun gave to Noah, this one was even more majestic. Its entire body was emitting the light of jade, and its eyes were also emerald. It was unknown how many times it had awakened. Other than that, there were a few other exotic beasts that looked extraordinary as well. Zichun's eyes swept through the light clusters one by one and saw a bright and dazzling crystal. This was a beast crystal that was useful to strange beasts. It was a unique resource on the Sacred Beast Mountain. Just by looking at its quality, one could tell that it was extraordinary. Since it could appear on this floor, it was naturally useful to ghosts. His gaze continued moving. There was a spiritual light beside the crystal, but he did not know what it was for. On this floor, Zichun didn't think for too long. In fact, he didn't need to think. He looked at Yugue and said, "You decide what you want." Yugue, who was connected to Zichun, nodded. Its gaze immediately moved away from the exotic beasts and finally fell on the crystal and the spiritual light. It seemed a little hesitant. Zichun didn't rush it, and no one spoke to remind it. Obviously, there was still plenty of time for it to choose. In the end, Yugue chose the unknown spiritual light and swallowed it. It was as if it had eaten an ordinary exotic beast. On the surface, there was no change at all. Even under Zichun's careful perception, it was still the same. It was as if there was no gain. It was impossible for the opportunity here to be useless. Zichun was more willing to believe that he hadn't discovered it yet. Just like the opportunity he obtained on the Sacred Talisman Mountain, if it wasn't for the ghost spirit Sacred Talisman becoming 9, it would have been difficult for Zichun to kill UE. The other balls of light dissipated one by one, and a passage appeared in front of Zichun. Obviously, the trip to the Sacred Beast Mountain had reached its end and it was time to leave. After walking out of the passage, Zichun saw another mountain peak. On this mountain peak, he saw the mountain lord of the sacred beast mountain. The other party was a tall old man. Just by looking at his face, he didn't seem to have a good temper. After the old man saw Zichun, he only looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze. Then, his gaze fell on Yugue. Yugue ignored the old man's gaze. Instead, he was very interested in the things around him. Zichun bowed to the old man. The old man looked at Zichun and said, "Where are you going next?" "Sacred Weapon Mountain." Zichun didn't even think about it before replying directly. The old man nodded and said, "Then go." Zichun asked doubtfully, "Didn't you say you would give me a token? Let's talk about it when everything is over." In the next moment, Zichun returned to the assessment site. There were only 2 floating mountain passages in front of him. Seeing Zichun disappear, the old man sighed and said, "Your battle strength is not bad, but you still have no chance of winning against Shangluan. If this old man's guess is correct, Shangluan should have obtained a great opportunity on the Sacred Weapon Mountain. Then, he will go to the Sacred Soul Mountain to try for the final opportunity." This was the old man's sigh. It was destined that Zichun wouldn't hear it. At this moment, Zichun stepped into the Sacred Weapon Mountain. Yugue had been following Zichun. After all, he was also a great battle strength. However, after arriving at the Sacred Weapon Mountain, Zichun found that he still couldn't take Yugue away. It was like a real-life body, no longer a manifestation of soul techniques. Zichun didn't care too much about this. Perhaps it was like this on the Sacred Weapon Mountain. As soon as he entered the Sacred Weapon Mountain, Zichun felt a strong killing intent. It filled the surroundings and seemed to be deliberately targeting him. This puzzled Zichun. After all, it was his first time here. At this moment, the entire Sacred Weapon Mountain began to shake. Countless weapons flew out from the ground and into the sky. For a moment, the sky was filled with all kinds of weapons. These were all sacred weapons. The quality of each soul weapon was far superior to the outside world. At this moment, the countless weapons flew into the sky. The intense killing intent made Zichun feel extremely uncomfortable. He took out his spirit shield and staff to guard against the attacks of the Sacred Weapon Mountain. This scene was naturally beyond the expectations of everyone in the Sacred Mountain City. Some people inquired about Zichun's odds and found that they still hadn't opened. They couldn't help but feel dejected and regretful. After all, it was very easy for Zichun to smoothly reach the upper echelons. At this moment, the cries rang out once more. The weapons that had soared into the sky suddenly parted to the sides, and actually took the initiative to open up a path for Zichun into the distance. This scene was very familiar. Zichun had encountered the same situation on the 3rd level of the Sacred Talisman Mountain. Now, this scene was happening again. At the end of these weapons was a huge lake. This was the spiritual energy needed for the baptism of the Sacred Weapon Mountain. It was also the greatest opportunity on the 1st level. Chapter 38-68. This scene was extremely shocking, causing countless people to be moved. After all, even the powerful Shangluan did not receive such treatment when he came here. While everyone was shocked, they also felt that it was a pity. Because this treatment originally belonged to Yue, but now it was snatched away by Zichun. Obviously, this scene was attracted by the Life Companion's spiritual shield, and it was a real opportunity. After Zichun entered the Saint Weapon Mountain, Oli's expression could no longer remain calm, and he was worried about his gains and losses. Wuyid came forward and said, "Could it be that the final battle will be held here?" Oli did not reply. He was indeed very nervous. In his original plan, Zichun and Shangluan should have a decisive battle on the Saint Soul Mountain. At that time, the winner would naturally obtain the best opportunity. But he did not expect that the two would meet so soon. Fortunately, Zichun had obtained Yui's spirit shield, and at this moment, the spirit shield was indeed extraordinary. Zichun walked to the end of the 1st floor. In front of him was the opportunity to baptize the Saint Soul weapon, and to the side was the passage to the 2nd floor. The Saint Soul weapons behind him were trembling, as if they were expressing their joy. Zichun took out 2 Saint Soul weapons and threw them forward. The baptism was an opportunity. If one's luck was good, they could use it once on every floor. Who knew that when Zichun threw out the 2 Saint Soul weapons, the two weapons actually circled above the baptism pool and then returned to Zichen's hand. An uproar sounded in the city. This kind of situation had happened before. The strange weapon that the woman called Shanya held only circled above the baptism pool once, and then returned. In the words of some old people, it was said that the grade was too high, and it did not care about this kind of low-grade opportunity. Obviously, the two weapons in Zichen's hand also did not care about the baptism on the first floor. If the life companion's spiritual shield did not care about it, it was pardonable. After all, it was a weapon that could enter the top 100 of the soul weapon ranking. But why did that broken rod not care about it? Zichen was taken aback for a moment before he regained his senses and grabbed the two weapons in his hands. Then, he turned around and entered the next floor. When he arrived at the second floor, the same thing happened again. Countless Saint Soul weapons flew up to make way for him. This scene was very unusual, because the quality of the Saint Soul weapons on the second floor was extremely high. Very few of them were willing to submit to them. Zichen continued forward, and the opportunity of the second floor appeared before his eyes. On the third level of Sacred Weapon Mountain, next to the baptism opportunity, a tit-for-tat confrontation was taking place. On one side was the powerful Shang Luan, and on the other side was the famous Shanya. At this moment, the two of them were already in front of the opportunity. However, Shang Luan obviously did not want Shanya to also obtain the opportunity here. He wanted to drive her away. Either get lost now or die now. Shang Luan stared coldly at Shanya. Don't expect me to be kind to you because I hate people like you. I'm already being merciful by giving you a chance to live. Shanya's tone was equally cold. Is that so? As luck would have it, I hate you too. Shang Luan's eyes shone with a cold light. Light bloomed in his hand, and a light sword appeared. This was his soul weapon. It had been baptized 3 times, and its quality was 1 grade higher. The two of them were about to fight, but the Sacred Weapon Mountain Casino did not open any bets for their battle. Obviously, they did not believe that Shanya had the strength to resist Shang Luan. Swoosh! Soul light flowed around Shanya as she rushed toward Shang Luan. In Shang Luan's hand, the long sword flowed with brilliance, and he slashed it down. A beam of light flew out in front of Shanya. It was the weapon that had been refined by the miracle stone. Clang! Along with the explosion of a sonorous sound, a powerful fluctuation spread out. On the surface of the spiritual energy lake, ripples were stirred up. The miracle stone returned to Shanya's hand. Shang Luan looked at the weapon in his hand, and there was a touch of astonishment in his eyes. This was because there was a very small crack on his weapon. It should be known that the weapon in his hand was not only a holy soul weapon, but also an extremely rare holy soul weapon that had been baptized 3 times. Unexpectedly, there was a crack on it after just 1 clash. Then, what was the origin of the weapon in his opponent's hand? Shanya snorted, and the miracle stone flew out again, heading straight for Shang Luan's face. It was like a flash of lightning, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of Shang Luan. Shang Luan blocked it with his sword again, but this time, the long sword in his hand burst out with rays of holy light. The sonorous sound was heard again. Shang Luan retreated several feet, and the crack on the long sword in his hand became clear again. The miracle stone attacked for the 3rd time. Then, the 4th time. The 5th time. The entire Sacred Weapon Mountain City was in an uproar. In the eyes of the crowd, Shang Luan and Shanya would definitely be one-sided. They did not expect Shang Luan to be suppressed at this moment. After the 6th clash, the weapon in Shang Luan's hand broke with a crack. A soul weapon that was recognized by the Sacred Weapon Mountain and had been baptized 3 times was destroyed just like that. At this moment, everyone looked at Shanya and the strange soul weapon in her hand. How could it destroy Shang Luan's weapon? How amazing was that? The miracle stone flew out again. This time, without the holy soul weapon, Shang Luan could only rely on his own soul power to block it. Countless rays of holy light bloomed from Shang Luan's body, forming a huge protective light shield in front of him. It was like a real shield of holy light, protecting him. Boom! The miracle stone smashed down, and a unique mysterious power lingered on it, hitting the shield of holy light. The shield instantly shattered, and Shang Luan's body flew backward. Another uproar came from the city. In their eyes, Shang Luan was almost invincible, but he was actually defeated by Shanya? At the same time, Shang Rao, who had been watching this scene from the Sacred Weapon Mountain, changed his expression, and then he walked up to the Sacred Weapon Mountain without hesitation. This time, his goal was to let the Saint Do art reach new heights. How could he let Shang Luan fall in the hands of this little girl? She was just a little girl relying on a weapon. How capable could she be? Moreover, in terms of weapons, who could have more than the Sacred Weapon Mountain? Arriving at the Sacred Weapon Mountain, Shang Luan went to see the Mountain Lord directly. No one knew what the two of them discussed. After Shang Rao left, the Mountain Lord went to find Mirror Spirit. The two of them conspired again. After Mirror Spirit nodded, the Mountain Lord left with satisfaction. Looking at the Mountain Lord leaving, Mirror Spirit smiled faintly and said, "You even dare to use 100 soldiers. What a big move. But this time, I want to see who is stronger between the two of you. After so many years, one of you is wandering outside, and the other is patiently nurturing." Shang Luan was retreating at this moment because Shan Yu's soul weapon was too powerful. Even his powerful Saint Do art had no effect. Of course, the main reason was that he couldn't get close to her. As Shang Luan retreated, it could be said that he was fleeing. Everywhere he passed, everyone was flabbergasted. Finally, Shang Luan fled to a place shrouded in clouds and drizzling rain. He stopped in midair, then turned around to look at Shanya, who had caught up. "Next, I want you dead." He grabbed at the air, and the clouds and drizzling rain gathered in front of him, turning into a sword. The Cloud Rain Sword. At the end of the 100 soldiers. Chapter 3869. Looking at the baptism on the second floor, Zichen handed over the staff and shield again. It would be a waste to reject a free opportunity. However, just like last time, the two returned. Clearly, they were not interested in the baptism on this floor either. This made Zichen slightly stunned. Then, he shook his head helplessly. However, this was a good thing. There were still 2 floors left. He was not in a hurry at all. Just as he took back the 2 Saint Soul weapons, the entire Saint Weapon Mountain suddenly shook. The staff and shield in his hands also began to tremble, releasing a murderous aura. This sudden change made Zichen slightly stunned. He did not understand what was going on. This was because he could feel a strong battle intent from the staff and shield. Filled with doubts, he entered the 3rd floor. However, when he reached this floor, the ground shook even more violently. All the Saint Soul weapons that appeared were pointing in one direction, constantly trembling. Or perhaps they were worshipping, just like subjects worshipping their king. Wang. The battle intent released from the staff and shield in Zichen's hands became even more intense. Subconsciously, Zichen's gaze stared in the direction the tip was pointing in. His eyes narrowed slightly. The Cloud Rain Sword was ranked at the end of the 100 weapon ranking. It was only ranked 100. However, it still caused a huge commotion. This was because none of the weapons on the 100 weapon ranking were ordinary. They were all Supreme Kings on the Saint Weapon Mount. The moment Shang Luan held the Cloud Rain Sword, his aura changed. Shanya, who was chasing forward, stopped. She felt a strong threat from the sword. Shanya did not recognize the Cloud Rain Sword, but Shang Luan obviously knew its origins. He could not help but smile coldly. "Today, not only will you die, but your weapon will also be mine." The sword slashed down with boundless killing intent. The miracle stone flew up and blocked in front of Shanya. Its body flowed with a mysterious light. This was the first time it had switched from offense to defense. The sword light landed on the miracle stone, erupting with boundless light. It was like a blazing fire, and waves of air surged. Powerful waves of air spread out continuously, attacking the sky. Shanya rapidly retreated, and the miracle stone retreated as well. It remained unscathed against the Cloud Rain Sword strike. Shang Luan's expression did not change, and his sword fell again. With such a divine weapon in hand, there was no need to use soul techniques at all to win most battles. At this time, Shanya was continuously retreating. Shang Luan closed in step by step, slashing down with his sword again and again. Shanya's face became paler and paler. If it wasn't for the extraordinary quality of the miracle stone, she would have been defeated long ago. The last strike, die. A cold voice rang out. Shang Luan stepped forward again, and the entire sky trembled. Countless clouds and rain curled around his sword. Right at this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly flew over from afar, heading straight for Shang Luan. The speed of this sword light was extremely fast. It could be considered a sneak attack. Of course, it was more of a rescue mission. Shang Luan snorted coldly and turned around to draw his sword. A sword mark appeared in the sky. Clang! The ray of sword light that flew over immediately went far away. Looking at the ray of sword light that went far away, Shang Luan frowned unhappily. His Cloud Rain sword was one of the 100 weapons, and it was extremely sharp. Not only was it unable to do anything to Shan Yu's strange weapon, it was also unable to damage this sneak attack weapon at all. One had to know that his previous weapon was of extremely high quality, but it still shattered. The ray of sword light went far away, and a person appeared on the horizon. It was Lan Guming. After seeing Lan Guming, Shang Luan's expression turned even colder. He naturally knew that she was on Zichen's side. He said indifferently, "I thought I could only kill one of you this time. Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll fulfill both of your wishes." While the staff and shield were reacting to each other, Zichen also received more information from Yu Gue. For example, Lan Guming was on this floor. Because Yu Gue sensed the blue dragon beast's aura, the two could communicate in a special way. As a result, his narrowed eyes were filled with coldness. The blue dragon beast had informed him that Lan Guming was currently in danger. Let's go and see which idiot is courting death. Just as Zichen was heading deeper, Zichen opened the bets again. This time, the bets were on whether Zichen could defeat Shang Luan. Currently, the odds were 1-to-1. Clearly, this was only the beginning. The current situation was still unstable, so no one was in a hurry to place their bets. This was because Zichen's side had a total of 3 people, and they were not weak either. They had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. At the same time, another piece of news spread from the various gambling dens on the Sacred Mountain. It was about the battle between 2 martial arts practitioners again. This made many of the older generation recall the battle from many years ago, and they all sighed with emotion. Back then, the successor of the Tremor combat arts had been defeated, and the Sacred Mountain gambling den had to pay a large sum of blue crystal coins as a result, resulting in a great loss and a change of ownership. Many years later, the successor of the Tremor combat arts had reappeared. Clearly, another battle was about to take place. Looking at Zichen moving forward on the screen, Oli's emotions became complicated. He did not care about the discussions around him. After all, so many years had passed, and there was no point in looking into what happened back then. Right now, Zichen was his hope and all he could rely on. Whether or not you can avenge the Tremor combat arts will depend on you, Oli muttered. I hope you can obtain that final supreme glory. On the screen, Zichen was flying at an extremely fast speed. His target was very clear. Wherever he passed, countless sacred soul weapons that were supposed to block his path would dodge. This situation had happened on the previous 2 floors, so it was not surprising that it happened again. Just as he was about to reach his destination, he felt a strong shockwave, and he sensed a familiar aura from it. Shang Luan. Thus, from far away, Zichen shouted loudly. It was as if thunder had exploded from the 9th heaven, and it spread into the distance. The shockwave in front of him dispersed, and the battle stopped. Noah and Lan Guming stood together. Their faces were extremely pale. It was not that they were weak, but that Shang Luan's weapon was too terrifying. Shang Luan stood in the air with the Cloud and Rain sword in hand. When he heard Zichen's voice, he turned around and looked into the distance. A mocking smile appeared on his face. It seems like another one has come to die. With the Cloud and Rain sword in hand, he had absolute confidence in his own battle strength. It could be said that in this sacred weapon mountain, he, who had hundreds of weapons, was invincible. Zichen appeared in Shang Luan's field of vision and walked forward step by step. He saw Shang Luan, so naturally, he also saw Noah and Lan Guming. When he got close, Zichen said, "You two go to the next floor first." The two were naturally unwilling. Zichen said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine. Moreover, this is a battle between the 2 of us. It's a battle between martial arts." This was also a battle between martial arts. Chapter 3870. Seeing Zichen's determined gaze, Shanya and Lan Gumeng nodded before leaving. The two of them went to the final floor. Sheng Luan did not stop the two of them, allowing them to leave. He did not even say anything. Clearly, he knew that once the three of them worked together, it would be extremely troublesome, even if he possessed the Cloud and Rain Sword. The two of them stared at each other until Shanya and Lan Gumeng completely vanished from sight. As a result, the odds in the city changed. Zichen's odds began to increase, while Sheng Luan's remained the same. The Cloud and Rain Sword was a weapon in the top 100, while Zichen's Spirit Shield could only enter the top 100 after being baptized. It was clear at a glance who was stronger and who was weaker. Over the past few centuries, the Cloud and Rain Sword's ranking had never changed. This was the best proof of its strength. In a one-on-one battle, Zichen did not even have the slightest chance of victory. How was anyone supposed to place their bets? The gambling house had increased Zichen's odds. Wasn't this clearly a scam? Zichen looked at Sheng Luan as his expression gradually turned cold. Under the uproar, Sheng Luan stowed the Cloud and Rain Sword away and said indifferently, "Looks like you really think you've lived enough." Zichen said nothing. With a tap of his foot, he charged forward. This was a wondrous footwork from combat techniques. In other words, it was the tremor combat technique. Just when Zichen used the wondrous footwork from the tremor combat technique, Sheng Luan felt an intense sense of hostility. "Die!" He called out coldly and charged at Zichen as he lit up with sacred light. After so many years, the tremor combat technique and sacred combat technique clashed once more. There were no powerful blasts of energy. There were only constantly flickering lights and changing positions from time to time. Sacred light revolved around Sheng Luan. Every strike was filled with a sacred aura. His footwork was composed and his figure was graceful. He excelled in both offense and defense. Zichen's attacks came and went like a shadow. They also possessed powerful vibrational force, leaving behind ripples in the air wherever they passed. A clash of combat techniques did not require too much space. The two of them only needed to move around in a very small area. However, the risks involved were definitely not small. After all, practically all of the opponents that Zichen had faced so far had been defeated in a single strike. Everyone in the Sagely Mountain City was paying attention to the battle between the two. This kind of confrontation continued for 15 minutes. Everyone was shocked, but Oli shook his head and said discontentedly, "This probing time is a little too long." "You're sure this is just a test?" Wu Yid couldn't believe it. The shockwaves from their clash were too strong. Even though the two of them didn't need a lot of space to fight, the shockwaves from the battle still flattened the area around them. The Saint Spirit weapons on the third floor were all forced to retreat. "Die!" At this moment, a sacred sword that shone with sacred light appeared in Sheng Luan's hand. He slashed down with the sword. Zichen raised his left hand to block. A shield with the power of lightning appeared and blocked the sword. Buzz! Countless sacred lights sputtered out like a sacred rain. It was dazzling. A long staff appeared in Zichen's right hand. Countless lightning bolts surrounded the staff. He struck with the staff. Boom! The heavens and earth shook. This attack was full of power. It directly attacked Sheng Luan, who was close by. A shield of sacred light appeared in front of Sheng Luan and blocked the attack. This was combat technique. The two of them came from the same source. It was just that the way of exerting force was not the same. They separated upon contact. The two of them retreated and then charged forward again. This time, they used illusionary weapons. The battle between the two of them became even louder. It was as if there were continuous explosions of lightning. However, from the looks of it, the two of them were evenly matched. The two of them who were fighting suddenly stopped. They stopped at the same time. The two of them were more than 10 feet apart. This was the best attacking distance for both of them who knew combat techniques. "Your strength is not bad. However, I don't have that much time to fight with you. Let's end this." The Holy Spirit raised the sacred light sword in his hand and slashed down. It was as if a real light had instantly approached Zichen. Countless lightning bolts on the shield of light raised by Zichen were destroyed. At the same time, the shield of light exploded with a boom. Then, a powerful force sent Zichen flying. This was Sheng Luan's true strength. At the same time, It was also the strength that the holy battle technique should have. Burst. Looking at Zichun, who was sent flying, a cold light flashed in Shang Luan's eyes. He moved forward again. It was still the same sword, but the power was stronger. Zichun raised the staff in his hand. In the next moment, the staff also exploded. Zichun was sent flying for the second time. When he stabilized his body, there was blood at the corner of his mouth. In the previous probing battle, his perception of the holy battle technique was far inferior to these 2 times. Shang Luan said proudly, "The tremor battle technique is just a small trick. How can it be compared to my holy battle technique? Back then, you lost and left with your tails between your legs. This time, the outcome will be the same. Even the next time, and the time after that will be the same. The tremor battle technique will never be qualified to be compared to the holy battle technique." Holy light burst out from his body again. A terrifying and sacred aura surged out. Shang Luan did not use his soul weapon. Therefore, Zichun did not take out his staff and spiritual shield. This was a battle of combat techniques. This time, he wanted to prove the tremor battle technique. Shang Luan, who had fully erupted, became even faster. Like a bolt of lightning, he approached Zichun in an instant. In the next moment, Zichun's staff and Dunley exploded. He coughed up blood and was sent flying. The gap between them was obvious. The battle seemed to have been decided. Cheers broke out in the city. Nothing unexpected happened. The holy battle technique was still as powerful as before. This time, they really made a fortune. On the Holy Soul Mountain, Shang Rao saw this scene and could not help but shake his head. He said disappointedly, "Oh Li, I thought you must have found a great existence. I didn't expect him to be so useless. You are too disappointing. But thinking about it, you are a failure. Of course, your vision is not good." At this time, Zichun was beaten back again. He coughed up blood again. Defeat was a foregone conclusion. Wu Yud looked at the scene of Zichun's defeat in the sky, and then at Oli, who was staring at the sky. He opened his mouth but did not say anything in the end. Maybe the tremor battle technique was really not as good as the holy battle technique, because the power of the 2 was not the same. In terms of battle, the holy battle technique was more destructive. Shishan's younger brother let out a sigh. They had earned a lot after coming to the holy mountain city, but if Zichun was defeated this time, they would have nothing in the end. But the only thing that made them feel lucky was that at least their lives were saved. They would not have to work for someone else after losing everything. "What are you sighing for? Lord didn't lose." Shishan's older brother said unhappily. "Lord Zichun is coughing up blood. How can this not be?" Before the last word could be said, exclamations came from all around. Chapter 3871. Zichun had actually dodged Shang Luan's attack. Even though the energy shield was still broken, it still surprised many people. Shang Luan didn't seem to care at all. He said sarcastically, "I forgot that you people from the tremor technique are also good at escaping. But since I'm here today, I'd like to see how many times you can escape and where you can run to." Zichun said indifferently, "Show me what you've got." Ripples surged on the surface of his body. He had already maximized the power of the tremor technique. Shang Luan moved forward again. The explosive power of the holy technique made him as fast as a beam of light, carrying his sword with him. The shield and staff appeared in front of Zichun again. With a loud boom, the shield and staff were broken again. Zichun retreated again. This time, Shang Luan's explosive power caused him a certain amount of damage again. To be on par with the tremor technique, the holy technique was indeed a powerful technique. Zichun ignored the blood at the corner of his mouth and continued to retreat. Shang Luan moved forward again. Zichun retreated. He retreated again and again. He was retreating again and again. The city was filled with cheers. Many people wanted to see Zichun lose. Shishan's brother and the others were extremely pale. Even Shishan's brother, who was full of confidence in Zichun, had a look of worry in his eyes. Oli, on the other hand, was no longer so nervous. Instead, he breathed a sigh of relief. Wu Yud was a little surprised. He asked, "Young master, aren't you worried that Zichun will lose?" Oli smiled. This was the first time he smiled since Zichun met Shang Luan. "Lose? How is that possible? The tremor technique has never lost to the holy technique. Wu Yud's expression became strange. One had to know that the stakes in the battle that year were extremely high. It was because of the young master's loss that the Sacred Mountain Casino changed owners. Oli knew that Wu Yud didn't believe him, but he didn't care. He continued. Now look at Zichun and see if his expression changes. Wu Yud looked at Zichun on the screen again. However, Zichun kept retreating and seemed to have no strength left to fight. However, since Wu Yud was able to become the youngest manager of the Sacred Mountain Gambling House, he naturally wasn't an ordinary person. He quickly discovered the difference in Zichun. His eyes are still calm. Calm eyes often represent calmness. He has not lost his mind yet. He is like a cheetah that has been observing its prey and waiting for an opportunity to attack. Wu Yud said in a low voice. This was the conclusion he had drawn from Zichun's expression. Oli smiled and said, "This kid's perception is really not bad. It seems that the troubles he encountered along the way really had a tempering effect on him. With this gaze, it proves that he has already grasped the essence of the tremor battle technique. It won't be a problem for him to completely crush the Saint battle technique." Wu Yud was naturally skeptical. If the Saint battle technique could be defeated so easily, then the young master wouldn't have been defeated back then. But looking at the young master's expression now, he was very relaxed and confident. Could it be that there was some secret behind what had happened back then? Seeing Zichun retreat again and again, Sheng Luan said with a mocking expression, "So this is your tremor battle technique? How can it be compared to my Saint battle technique? I think you should make the tremor battle technique disappear as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will tarnish the reputation of our Saint battle technique." Zichun stood 10 feet away. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, "All right, the test is over. Let's decide the winner." Unsurprisingly, his words caused Sheng Luan to laugh mockingly. It also caused boos in the city. Only Big Brother Shishan's eyes lit up as if he had seen hope. Test? What big words? You're about to die, and you still dare to talk to me about testing? Sheng Luan sneered disdainfully. Zichun didn't reply. There was no point in a meaningless war of words. He assumed a battle stance. The Saint battle technique was indeed powerful, but the tremor battle technique was also extraordinary. You're courting death. Sheng Luan took Zichun's action as a provocation, so he rushed forward and launched another powerful attack. This time, Zichun didn't use his shield. Instead, he stood in place and watched Sheng Luan charge forward. After experiencing it many times, he already knew where the power of the Saint battle technique came from. The explosive power of the Saint battle technique was only used on things it came into contact with. If it couldn't come into contact with something, then the explosive power would be useless. As Sheng Luan approached, the vibration power around Zichun began to circulate rapidly, forming countless ripples that appeared around him and under his feet. A powerful aura rushed toward him like a huge wave, lifting the corners of Zichun's clothes and hair. Sheng Luan approached and slashed down with his sword. Oli held his breath. Whether Zichun could turn the tables depended on whether he could seize this opportunity. More ripples appeared under Zichun's feet. These ripples seemed to form some kind of resonance with the incoming shockwave. At the moment when the long sword was about to land, it caused his body to change direction. From the looks of it, Zichun had easily dodged Sheng Luan's sword with just a slight movement and a flash. This is the power of vibration. He has indeed comprehended it. Oli, who was nervous, shouted excitedly. Under the vibration of the ripples, Zichun came to Sheng Luan's side and gently struck out with his palm. Countless ripples flowed out from his palm. Sheng Luan stood there, his body not swaying at all. It was as if this attack didn't hurt him at all. He immediately held his sword and slashed horizontally, leaving a sword mark on the side. Zichun's body had already disappeared. He appeared on the other side of Sheng Luan and struck out with his palm again. Just like before, it seemed as if there wasn't any power behind it. Then, his body disappeared again. Sheng Luan's sword arrived once again, but it still didn't hit Zichun. Zichun appeared at Sheng Luan's side for the third time and launched another light attack. It seemed as if Sheng Luan was chasing after Zichun with his sword. Zichun obviously had a good chance, but he couldn't effectively deal a fatal blow to Sheng Luan. Zichun's body moved again and again. Every time he struck out, he was powerless. Even so, Zichen's face turned pale at an extremely fast speed. It was as if he had used some kind of powerful technique that had consumed too much of his strength. No one knew the reason for this. Only Oli knew. At this moment, in addition to being excited, he was more shocked because Zichen had already struck 6 times. The 6 strikes didn't seem to have much power, but each strike contained an infinite power of vibration. Moreover, this power had to be hidden and couldn't be released immediately. The difficulty of this was extremely high. Moreover, as the number of strikes increased, the difficulty would increase. Of course, the power would also increase. A total of 8 strikes. Zichen's aura became very weak, and his speed was greatly reduced. The sword light arrived and slashed across Zichen's chest, tearing his black robe. He took the opportunity to retreat, his face as pale as paper. However, his eyes were extremely bright, and he looked excited. This was because his vibration battle technique had reached a new height. He had mastered the power of vibration. Humph, let's see how long you can last. Shang Luan held his long sword and pointed it at Zichen indifferently. At this moment, he had been attacked 8 times, but he was unharmed. However, Zichen only said one word. Vibration. Chapter 3872. The holy light surrounding Shang Luan was suddenly extinguished, and in its place were ripples that surged out from his body. It was Zichen's tremor force, which had completely erupted in Shang Luan's body. Shang Luan's body fell to the ground, blood spurting out of his mouth. Countless people in the city were in an uproar when they saw this scene. Shang Luan clearly had the upper hand just now, so why was he suddenly defeated? This is the power of the tremor technique. Oli was in an extremely good mood and laughed heartily. Wu Yud, on the other hand, was very surprised. He didn't know much about combat arts, so he felt that Zichen was really amazing to be able to turn the situation around. Amazing! Shishan's younger brother waved his fist vigorously. He was extremely excited. The people he brought with him also had excited expressions on their faces. Compared to the excited crowd, the surrounding people had a dejected look on their faces. Many of them even began to curse. Impossible. This is impossible. On the Saint Soul Mountain, Shang Luo looked at the scene in disbelief. He couldn't accept this fact. Mirror Spirit didn't say anything. On the Saint Beast Mountain and the Saint Talisman Mountain, the 2 mountain lords also watched silently. Zichen looked at Shang Luan in front of him and said indifferently, "You lost?" Shang Luan looked up. His face was pale, and his eyes were full of resentment. He roared, "I didn't lose." Zichen said, "You lost, so the holy technique lost. Don't be so arrogant in front of others in the future. Your holy technique is nothing in my eyes." Zichen's voice spread throughout the entire Sagely Mountain City. Countless people heard this news. This meant that the tremor technique had won this battle. He had avenged his humiliation. For a moment, many old people felt emotional and recalled the scene from back then. Back then, the tremor technique had failed, and he had to leave in a sorry state. "I said I didn't lose." Shang Luan stood up again. He took out a pill and swallowed it. His injuries were visibly healing. "I'm still alive. I haven't lost this battle." The pill was very magical. Shang Luan's injuries were mostly healed, and he had a sword in his hand. It was the Cloud Rain sword. Clouds and mist swirled around the sword as waves of sharp sword intent were released. The people who were cursing Shang Luan in the city began to cheer when they saw this scene. Only now did they remember Shang Luan's strongest move. The tremor battle technique competition had nothing to do with the huge bet that they had placed. As long as St. Luan won in the end, they would be able to win the reward. Die! Shang Luan advanced with his sword. This time, he used the Cloud and Rain sword. He had used this sword to suppress Shanya and Lan Gumeng earlier. A spirit shield appeared in front of Zichen. This was Yu Yi's companion spirit shield. When Shang Luan saw this, his expression couldn't help but change slightly. When the sword struck the spiritual shield, a powerful aura surged out. Zichen's spiritual shield managed to block the Cloud Rain sword's attack, but he was knocked back almost 300 meters. Above the spirit shield, the radiance was flickering, and the spiritual light was flickering. Its defense was still powerful, but it was no longer as powerful as when it was in Yu Yi's hands. After all, it was Yu Yi's companion spirit shield. Shang Luan's eyes were sharp, so he obviously saw this as well. As a result, he snorted coldly. I'd like to see how many more of my attacks your crappy shield can block. A sword of light appeared in Shang Luan's left hand. Afterwards, the sword of light fused with the cloud rain sword. There was this move in the tremor battle technique as well. By fusing with the weapon, it would become even more powerful. However, when Shang Luan used this move, the cloud rain sword in his hand shone with light that was as dazzling as the sun. Sensing the powerful sword intent up ahead, Zichun dared not be careless either. He conjured a shield of light as well and fused it with the spirit shield. A boom rang out in the sky as a powerful aura spread out. Zichun was knocked back over 300 meters again. The light on the surface of the spirit shield had already dimmed, flickering from time to time. Clearly, if this continued, Zichun's unbaptized spirit shield would only be able to last a few more strikes before being completely destroyed. Shang Luan sneered. Looks like you're still going to die in the end, Zichun said indifferently. So what? In a clash of battle techniques, I'm the victor. Shang Luan said, today, we're only going to fight to the death, not the victor. Only when I die will you have the right to say that you've won. In front of Zichun, light flickered as he put away the spirit shield. In the next moment, a black staff appeared in his hand. This was a weapon he had obtained from killing a mortal soul expert. He had never thought that it would be a saint soul weapon. As Zichun's cultivation increased, he discovered that the might of this saint soul weapon exceeded his imagination. Furthermore, he had never been able to unleash the true might of this saint soul weapon. Right now, the spirit shield's defense was clearly insufficient, so Zichun took it out again. He looked at the spirit shield and said, although this is the 100 weapons cloud rain sword, I don't think you're any weaker than it. Wong. The spirit within the staff seemed to have heard Zichun's words. The staff actually trembled on its own accord, and a portion of the patterns on its surface lit up. Zichun's eyes lit up. Could this weapon really be comparable to the cloud rain sword? At this moment, a sharp sword intent appeared once again. Shang Luan slashed forward with the cloud rain sword in his hand. Zichun held the long black staff in his hand and moved forward. With a shocking boom, powerful energy surged out in all directions. Under the layers of ripples, Zichun did not take a single step back. He had actually managed to block the attack. The city was in an uproar. Even Yu Yi's soul shield could not block the cloudy rain sword's attack. So how could an insignificant black stick block the cloudy rain sword? In front of Zichun, the power of tremors surged once again. A black staff appeared in his left hand. In the next moment, the two staffs fused together. On the black staff in Zichun's hand, the inscriptions lit up one by one. Almost half of the staff was lit up. Zichun's lightning-type soul power continued to pour into the staff. More than half of the patterns had lit up. The staff trembled once again, and a bestial roar seemed to ring out from it. Zichun swung the staff down, leaving behind a clear staff shadow in the air. Sensing the power of this attack, Shang Luan's face could not help but change. He activated the cloud rain sword in his hand once again. Boom! The two weapons clashed, erupting with a violent boom. Shang Luan only felt a violent aura surge towards him, forcing him back. If he had not gripped the cloud rain sword tightly in his hand, it probably would have slipped out of his hand. He was constantly pushed back, while Zichun stood in the violent energy. The patterns on the staff in his hand flickered. How is this possible? Shang Luan cried out when he saw this. He had the cloud rain sword, but he was actually pushed back? Cloud rain domain. In the next moment, he roared out. The cloud rain sword in his hand immediately released countless rays of light. Under the envelopment of the light, the world lost its color. The clouds churned and raindrops fell from the sky like beans. Heaven and earth immediately became gray and hazy. At the same time, the entire sacred armament mountain began to shake once again. All the sacred soul weapons on the mountain charged towards the direction of the cloud rain sword, showing signs of submission. Once the cloud rain domain appeared, who could contend against it? Just as countless people lamented that the battle was about to end, a purple gold light suddenly soared into the sky and tore apart the cloud rain domain. Chapter 3873. This battle had attracted the attention of the entire world. This was because the 100 soldiers had appeared. The Cloud Rain Sword was extremely famous, and everyone knew about the domain of clouds and rain. Shang Luan had clearly held back in the previous battles, not using the domain of clouds and rain. Even so, he still managed to suppress the powerful Shanya and Lan Gu Ming. This time, Shang Luan directly used the domain of clouds and rain. Many people believed that the battle was about to end. In the city, many of the people who had cursed Shang Luan earlier had already begun to celebrate in advance. Being able to obtain victory and earn a fortune, they naturally would not be stingy with their praise. Many old people were also telling their juniors some of the history and past of the Cloud Rain Sword. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a purplish-gold light broke through the domain of clouds and rain and soared into the sky. It was like a purplish-gold pillar that held up the heavens. The Saint Armament Mountain was still shaking as countless Saint Soul weapons submitted. When they saw the purplish-gold figure, many people's expressions changed. A light flashed in Jing Ling's eyes as a faint smile appeared on her face. It really is you. The lords of the Four Mountains were slightly stunned as well. Then, they sank into their thoughts. The city was in an uproar. No one knew what had happened. After a long while, an old voice rang out. Rumor has it that several hundred years ago, a mysterious weapon came to challenge the Cloud Rain Sword. However, it did not succeed. As for that weapon, the light it gave off seemed to be purplish gold. With this news, an uproar broke out once more. Had the weapon from back then returned? Was it on Zichun? Within the domain of clouds and rain, Zichun looked at the black staff in his hand and could not help but be stunned. Just a moment ago, it seemed to contain boundless fury. Nearly 2/3 of the runes on its surface had already lit up, causing the black staff to turn purplish gold as it pierced through the domain of clouds and rain in one fell swoop. However, the price was not small. It had drained a great deal of Zichun's strength. Right now, the purplish gold light flickered and did not disperse for a long time. Zichun raised his head to look at the sky and then at his surroundings. Countless clouds and rain gathered, but they did not dare to advance at all. Furthermore, the emotions emitted from the staff were extremely agitated. Just like Zichun and Shang Luan, they were lifelong rivals. Slightly stunned, Zichun did not manage to seize the opportunity to leave. The purple-gold staff image above his head was rapidly shrinking and was finally covered by the domain of clouds and rain once more. The thick fog in the surroundings converged once again, and the rain of light that appeared within it carried a heavy feeling. However, Zichun wasn't upset at all. After knowing how extraordinary his staff was, he was confident that he could defeat Shang Luan here. The clouds rolled and the raindrops were like a rain of arrows, whistling towards Zichun. The spirit shield reappeared in front of Zichun. He raised his shield towards the sky. Countless rays of light bloomed, and a curtain of light descended, protecting Zichun within. The rain of arrows caused countless ripples in the defense. Zichun stood in the light screen and stared straight ahead. His mind was extremely focused. The clouds and mist in front of his eyes were a special kind of energy that blocked Zichun's vision and soul power perception. This was also why the staff had forcefully borrowed power to tear apart this space. It was hinting to Zichun to put the battle outside, because in this domain of clouds and rain, both Zichun and it were at a disadvantage. But Zichun didn't care. Or rather, after knowing how extraordinary the staff was, he decided to defeat it here. The staff was trembling slightly, and the patterns on it were also flickering, as if they were transmitting some kind of message. Zichun said in a low voice, "I don't know what grudges you have with that sword, but what I want to say is that you are extraordinary, so we don't need to fear you at all. If we want to win, we have to win fair and square. We'll completely defeat them right here, right in this domain of clouds and rain." As if it understood Zichun's words, the staff no longer trembled, and the light on its surface became even brighter. At this moment, a sword light broke through the clouds and appeared behind Zichun. Zichun didn't move, allowing the sword to approach. The clouds and mist were shaken away, and the sword was blocked by the spirit shield. The light on the surface of the spirit shield was changing, and the protection it formed was also distorting. The sword of clouds and rain disappeared. It was like a venomous snake in the dark, retreating after a single attack, not giving its opponent any time to counterattack. At this moment, in the city, seeing the purple gold staff disappear and the domain of clouds and rain heal, everyone who had bet on St. Lewin heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the domain of clouds and rain still existed, the sword of clouds and rain would be the strongest. Due to the fact that it was a sacred soul weapon from the sacred weapon mountain, it naturally possessed an absolute home ground advantage in this battle. It should be the weapon that was defeated back then. I didn't expect it to return again. No wonder it didn't care about the first and second levels baptisms. It seems like the strange phenomenon that appeared in Saint Weapon Mountain when Zichun fought Yu on Saint Beast Mountain might not have been caused by the companion spirit shield. Maybe it was because those Saint Soul weapons sensed the return of the challenger, which caused the strange phenomenon. Outside the gambling house, an old man of unknown age shook his head and sighed. However, it was too impatient. It shouldn't have challenged the Sword of Clouds and Rain right away. Its whereabouts are unknown over the years, but the Sword of Clouds and Rain has always been nurtured in Saint Weapon Mountain. Only today did it recognize a new master. It's clear who's stronger and who's weaker. Many of the spectators in the surroundings nodded in agreement. The purple gold staff was like a flash in the pan. Now that the domain of clouds and rain had regained control, they obviously believed that St. Lewin would be the final victor. This time, they had made a huge profit. It was already set in stone. Although Shishan's younger brother was worried this time, he did not say anything. There had been too many twists and turns. Anything could happen until the very last moment. No one could see what was happening on the battlefield. They could only slowly wait based on their own guesses. At this moment, the battle in the clouds was abnormally dangerous. Zichen's Light of Spirit Shield had already been attacked several times. Even if it was of extraordinary quality, it would not be able to hold on much longer. Zichen held the staff in his right hand. He still had not made a move. That was because he still had not grasped St. Lewin's position. However, he had already begun to accumulate power. The patterns on the staff in his hand lit up one by one. Within the light, apart from the roaming lightning, there were also streaks of purple gold light from time to time. The sword light arrived once again, carrying the power of the clouds and mist in the region. It was abnormally powerful and terrifying. With a bang, the Light of Spirit Shield was broken. The light on the Light of Spirit Shield instantly dimmed. The Light of Spirit Shield had suffered quite a bit of damage. Zichen put it away. If he continued to use it, the losses would outweigh the gains. This time, his entire body was no longer protected. He was exposed to the domain of clouds and rain. Seeing this scene from the shadows, St. Lewin launched a new attack without hesitation. Sensing the changes in the airflow and the surrounding mist, Zichun closed his eyes. The sword light appeared beside him. Like a viper attacking, it instantly closed in. The moment he sensed the sharp sword intent, Zichen borrowed the power of tremors to turn around and face the sword chi. With a PU, the sword chi had already pierced through Zichen's chest before the sword light arrived. Blood spurted out. Zichen opened his eyes. His eyes were cold and merciless. They were filled with a strong killing intent. The sword light quickly retreated and disappeared into the clouds and mist once again. In the domain of clouds and rain, St. Lewin had the advantage. Naturally, he did not want to fight Zichen head-on. At this moment, Zichen, who had opened his eyes, made a move. More than 2/3 of the patterns on the black staff in his hand lit up. The entire staff also turned purple gold. The staff began to tremble. He moved the staff forward. The staff rose and fell. A clear purple gold staff shadow appeared between heaven and earth. Like a blade that could split the sky, it directly divided the entire space into two. One staff strike to break the domain. At the end of this space was where St. Lewin was. As he retreated, he widened his eyes as he watched the staff shadow approach and fall on his head. There was a loud bang. On the ground, there was an additional crack that was thousands of feet long. Chapter 3874. The crack extended for tens of thousands of feet, and countless purple gold light shone out from within. Zichen, whose chest was bleeding, stood in the air. The long staff in his hand that was emitting purple gold light dimmed again. It turned back into an ordinary black staff that looked very inconspicuous. And in front of him, hundreds of feet away, Shang Luan stood in the air above the crack, motionless. In his hand, the cloud rain sword had been pushed into the crack. The entire city fell into silence. No one understood what had happened. Had Shang Luan won? Or had Zichun won? Some people saw that Shang Luan had lost his weapon and felt that something was wrong, but they still had hope in their hearts. They hoped for Shang Luan's victory, or rather, they longed for Shang Luan's victory. In the air, Zichun coughed up blood, and his body began to fall. He knelt on one knee on the ground, and the extraordinary staff fell to the side. In the quiet city, cheers sounded, because Shang Luan was still standing in the air. Zichun coughed up another mouthful of blood, and then slowly stood up. The cheers in the city stopped abruptly, and the entire city became quiet again. You lost, Zichun said, his voice calm and indifferent. Impossible. Shang Luan finally spoke. Just when everyone thought that he hadn't fallen yet, and that there was still hope for him to win, they saw blood continuously flowing out from his forehead. His body fell from the sky and fell into the huge crack. His last breath of life dissipated as he uttered those words. Shang Luan was dead. Zichun was still alive. The outcome of this battle had been decided. Without any suspense, the city was filled with wails. This is impossible. A furious voice came from the Saint Soul Mountain. It came from Saint Ray, but no one heard it. Oli stood there without saying a word, but the smile on his face could not be concealed. At the same time, he felt very proud, because he had chosen the right person. Zichun had finally righted the name of the tremor fighting technique. Young master has a good eye. Wu Yu could only sigh. This battle had been full of twists and turns, and he did not expect Zichun to win in the end. Even the Cloud Rain Sword, who ranked in the top 100, had been defeated. On the third level of Mount Saint Weapon, Zichun walked forward and came to the edge of the crack. He lowered his head and looked down. He only saw Shang Luan's corpse. The 100 soldiers' sword of cloud and rain had disappeared. He had no idea where it went. He then looked in another direction, where an exotic beast flashed and fled to the distance. It should be Shang Luan's pet. Zichun didn't let the ghost chase after them. The battle was over, and he was ready to enter the next level. Right at that moment, countless rays of light came from all directions. Those were sharp auras that came from all the Saint Soul weapons on the third floor of the Saint Weapon Mountain. At the same time, they each emitted a ray of light. These rays of light gathered together, as dense as raindrops. The aura was powerful, but there was no killing intent. Zichun was puzzled. His expression became solemn. The black staff left Zichun's hand and flew into the sky. All of the light was being absorbed by the black staff. In the next moment, all the Saint Soul weapons on this level, as well as the other 2 levels, bowed in the direction of the black staff, worshipping and submitting. The power of the Saint Soul weapons in the world seemed to be summoned. They flew toward the black staff in the sky. A huge devouring vortex appeared around the black staff. The spiritual baptism pool, which had not been used before, turned into rays of light of energy, leaving ribbons in the world. They arrived in front of the black staff and were absorbed by it. The Saint Weapon Mountain also started to shake, releasing an ancient and powerful aura, announcing the birth of a new 100 soldiers. Yes, after defeating the Cloud Rain Sword, Zichun's black staff was recognized and replaced the Cloud Rain Sword's position. Even though it was the weakest weapon, it still attracted a phenomenon from the Saint Weapon Mountain. This phenomenon lasted for 15 minutes. When all the energy disappeared, the black staff fell from the sky and landed in Zichun's hand. The light that flickered on its surface and the inscriptions were extinguished once again, returning to its simple appearance from before. It did not seem to have changed much. However, Zichun knew that it was no longer the same. It had gained the recognition of the Saint Weapon Mountain and absorbed the power of so many Saint Soul weapons. If it faced the Cloud Rain Sword again, it would achieve victory even more easily. And Zichun believed that the Cloud Rain Sword would not dare to appear again after this battle. Mirror Spirit looked away and murmured, "I saw your potential last time, but it's very unfortunate that the person who used you was too weak. This time, you sure have a good eye. You've met a master who's worthy of you." A staff that could challenge the Cloud Rain Sword was very powerful on its own, even if its master was very weak. In the eyes of the world, it was definitely a great weapon. However, it was a pity that after the death of that generation's master, its subsequent masters were unable to meet its requirements. Even if they obtained the Black Staff, they were unable to unleash its original power. At best, they could only treat it as a sturdy soul weapon. Of course, those masters would never know that the Black Staff had never truly acknowledged them as its master. After the battle ended, there was no longer any meaning for Zichun to remain on this floor. He headed to the next floor. Everything went smoothly. Seeing Zichun successfully reach the 4th floor, the Shishan brothers could no longer hold back and cheered loudly. They had profited again this time. Their cheers were a stark contrast to the wails and curses in the surroundings. From time to time, people would cast envious and jealous gazes at the two brothers. After arriving at the 4th floor, Zichun first saw a baptism pool. It did not look large, but the spiritual energy rippling within was very abundant. There was nothing in the spiritual pool, but there were two people standing beside the spiritual pool, Lan Gumeng and Shanya. When the two of them entered the 4th floor, they did not immediately baptize their weapons. Instead, they waited here. This was because they believed that Zichun would definitely win, so they deliberately waited here. Of course, if Zichun did not win, then the two of them would join forces here to kill Shangluan, no matter the price. This was the plan of the two of them. After seeing Zichun, the two of them immediately came forward, very happy. Zichun opened his arms and hugged the two girls under countless envious and jealous gazes. In an instant, countless people gnashed their teeth at Zichun, wishing they could replace him. "Why are you still here?" Zichun asked. "We were waiting for you to leave together," Lan Gumeng said. "We knew you would definitely come up." Shanya said, "You should hurry up and heal your injuries first." In the previous battle, Zichun had also suffered heavy injuries. At this moment, his chest was still bleeding. The reason why he immediately came to the 4th floor was obviously because he was worried that the others on the 3rd floor would fish in troubled waters. However, now that he saw the two of them, he was relieved. After 4 hours, Zichun's injuries were almost healed. He stood up and looked at the biggest opportunity in front of him. Next, it was time to reap the rewards. The staff and shield flew out, flying forward. Chapter 3875. Shan Yu's weapon was condensed from an entire piece of miracle stone. It was already an extraordinary weapon. As for Lan Gumeng's sword, it was originally thought to be a very ordinary soul weapon from the Lan family. Who would have thought that this weapon could continue to grow? After coming here, it had been baptized time and time again, and its grade became higher and higher. Zichun's weapon was needless to say. The spirit shield originally had the potential to become a 100 soldier, and the black staff had already become a 100 soldier. At this moment, the 4 weapons floated above the baptismal pool, constantly absorbing the spiritual energy below. The spiritual energy was pure and heavy. Even a 100 soldier would want to obtain the opportunity here. After so many years, very few people had obtained the opportunity here. At this moment, the 4 Saint Soul weapons, regardless of whether they were 100 soldier or other weapons, were frantically absorbing the energy, striving to strengthen themselves. At this moment, the 100 pillars of light, standing tall at the peak of Saint Weapon Mountain, suddenly underwent a change. Some of the pillars of light dimmed and then disappeared. Among them, each pillar of light represented a 100 soldier. Previously, when the Cloud Rain sword disappeared, the pillars of light had already changed once. This time, there were dozens of pillars of light that changed. This proved that the Saint Soul weapon ranking this time would undergo a significant change. The companion spirit shield that had been damaged earlier now released a light that became even brighter and more dazzling. At the same time, a powerful aura was released. Next was Lan Gumeng's weapon. It was a sword. At this moment, the sword's body became even more transparent, as if it was made of jade. It radiated light in all directions. Zichun's staff also released a purple-gold color. This was its original color. The one that changed the most was Shan Yu's weapon. The weapon that originally gave off a strange feeling also lost its camouflage after absorbing the energy, revealing its original appearance. Resplendent multicolored light blossomed, filling everyone's vision. This made everyone feel extremely shocked. In the next moment, someone recognized the essence of Shan Yu's weapon. They were all in disbelief. It's a miracle stone. Heavens, no wonder it could destroy Shang Luan's weapon. It's actually a miracle stone. A small piece of miracle stone can be called a supreme treasure. I didn't expect that Shanya would have such a big piece on him. Using a complete miracle stone as a sole weapon, how extravagant. For a moment, cries of surprise could be heard everywhere. Even many of the older generation exclaimed in amazement. Their burning gazes were fixed on Shan Yu's weapon in the video. Even the ever-changing rankings at the peak of Saint Weapon Mountain were no longer that attractive. It was unknown if it was because the Sacred Weapon Mountain was worried that something bad would happen, but when the various lights disappeared, the Sacred Weapon Mountain blocked the latest rankings. At the same time, they informed the public that the rankings would only be announced after the end of the examination. The fortuitous encounter on the 4th floor seemed to be inexhaustible. The 4 Holy Spirit weapons continued to absorb the fortuitous encounter without the slightest intention of stopping. The dense spiritual energy in the pool also did not disperse for a long time. On the Saint Weapon Mountain, who knew how many old people felt their hearts ache? This was because the fortuitous opportunities on the 4th level were different from those on the other 3 levels. They were limited in number and were first come, first served. The amount of fortuitous encounters here was very important. As long as you could withstand the amount, you could absorb as much as you wanted. It was just like the Cloud Rain Sword in the past. After coming to the 4th floor once, it had also absorbed the spiritual water here before advancing to the top of the 100 soldiers. However, the Cloud Rain Sword had not absorbed a lot of spiritual water back then, so it had reached its limit. In the following years, the Cloud Rain Sword nurtured itself on the Saint Weapon Mountain. Its potential increased by quite a bit, so it could withstand even more. Unfortunately, it never had the chance to reach the 4th floor. This time, it had a chance of reaching the 4th floor with Shang Luan's help. It never expected to encounter the mysterious weapon that had challenged it in the past, resulting in its defeat. Actually, in the eyes of the old people, they obviously hoped that the fortuitous encounter this time would be given to the Cloud Rain Sword. After all, it had stayed here for long enough. It was truly one of them. On the Saint Weapon Mountain, a short old man saw the 4 weapons that still did not end after a long time. He immediately ran to the peak of the mountain. Aside from the 100 soldiers, there was also the Saint Weapon Mountain's Mountain Master. At this moment, the Mountain Master was standing at the peak of the mountain. With such a huge matter happening, the powerful existences of the 4 mountains had long been alarmed. Many people who had been in closed-door cultivation for many years came out one after another to see the grand scene before them. The short old man arrived at the peak of the mountain and looked at the Mountain Master. He said excitedly, "Mountain Master, if we do not stop them, the many years of accumulations of our Saint Weapon Mountain will be used up." Using up everything was naturally an exaggeration. The accumulations that the Saint Weapon Mountain had accumulated over the years were extremely robust. As for the elders overseeing the Saint Weapon Mountain, they could take away a portion of it every 50 years. However, based on the speed at which the 4 soul weapons were absorbing, they would not be able to harvest anything in the next 50 years. In fact, they would not be able to harvest anything in the next 50 years. The Mountain Master looked at the scene happening on the 4th floor and said indifferently, "This test belongs to the will of the Holy Mountains. How can we stop it?" The short old man was stunned. Only then did he remember that all the tests were not under their control. The 4 Holy Mountains had their own wills. Once they carried out the wills of the Holy Mountains, even the Mountain Master could not go against them. However, the short old man was clearly unwilling to give up on their contributions. He said, "Why don't we go find the Mirror Spirit?" In the Holy Mountains, everyone knew that as long as they paid a sufficient price, there was nothing that could not be negotiated with the Mirror Spirit. Furthermore, the Mirror Spirit was the only existence that could communicate with the wills of the 4 mountains and change their minds. For example, Shang Luan had obtained the Cloud Rain Sword this time. Although it did not seem to follow the rules, as long as the Mirror Spirit agreed, everything was reasonable. The mountain master's gaze moved away from the fourth floor. Then, he looked at the changing 100 soldiers and said, "It has been many years since I saw such a scene. I originally thought that the Saint weapon rankings had already been formed, and that they were already the strongest Saint soul weapons in the world. I did not expect to see 4 different weapons today." The short old man was very anxious. "Mountain Master, aren't you just wasting time by saying such words at this time? For every bit of time wasted, the share that belongs to us will decrease by a lot. They are only in the human soul realm. This is only their first baptism. Yet, they are already so powerful. I am looking forward to their future achievements." The mountain master of the Saint Weapon Mountain laughed loudly. "Let them be. As long as they can absorb the opportunity, please do as you wish. Our Saint Weapon Mountain is not so stingy. We will open it to them. As long as they can take it, do as you wish." The short old man was so shocked that he could not say a word. Was this still the stingy and strong mountain master he knew? When did he become so generous? Chapter 3876. The short old man was well aware of the mountain master's temperament. After hearing the mountain master's words, he couldn't help but have a guess in his heart. He didn't continue to persuade him and turned to leave. At this moment, a strong thought appeared in his mind, and he couldn't get rid of it no matter what. Next, he held the mentality of watching a good show, watching Zichun and the other two obtain the opportunity. He wasn't anxious or impatient. This situation lasted for a full 4 hours, and the amount of resources consumed was enormous. The first to stop absorbing was Zichen's spirit shield. Next was Zichen's staff. Then, it wasn't Long Gu Ming's sword, but Shan Yu's miracle stone, which surprised Zichun. After all, the longer it lasted, the greater the harvest. In terms of quality, there shouldn't be any weapon that could compare to the miracle stone. The 4 holy soul weapons that had been promoted to the top 100 stopped absorbing energy. The 3 of them put away their weapons. A passage appeared in front of the 3 of them. This was the passage to leave. It should lead to the top of the mountain. After the 3 of them looked at each other, Zichun walked forward. However, after taking a step, he was surprised to find that he didn't reach the top of the Holy Weapon Mountain, but the entrance of the passage. In front of him, there was only one passage left, which led directly to the Holy Soul Mountain. After obtaining nothing on the Holy Talisman Mountain, the Holy Soul Mountain became Zichen's last hope. At the same time, Shanya and Noah also arrived at this place. The 2 of them didn't reach the top of the mountain, which surprised Zichun. However, when he thought of the situation he encountered at the top of the mountain, perhaps everything would have to wait until the end. At this moment, there was only one passage left in front of the 2 of them. Coincidentally, it was also the Holy Soul Mountain. "Then let's go together." Zichun smiled faintly and stepped into the passage. Long Gu Ming and Shanya followed closely behind. However, at this time, the 3 of them had closed all the bets, so it was impossible for anyone to place a bet. In the eyes of the people in the city, Zichen's group of 3 was clearly the strongest group that had entered the Saint Soul Mountain this time. After all, the 3 of them had hundreds of weapons. Who could compete with them in this place? For a time, most people sighed and regretted. If they had known the result would be like this, they would have made a lot of money by betting on Zichun. Why would they still be sighing here? In the Saint Soul Mountain, the Saint Soul technique was the main focus. If one was lucky enough, almost everything one saw could be a Saint Soul technique. For example, after killing a mutated beast, one might obtain a Saint Soul technique. For example, an ancient tree that had gained sentience could also be a wood-type offensive spell technique. "You fought with Yu-E?" Long Guming asked. Walking on the first floor, the 3 of them were very relaxed, as if they were tourists enjoying the scenery. "I won by luck," Zichun said. "If it weren't for Yu-Yi's shield, I'm afraid that the battle with St. Luan would have been much more difficult." With nothing to do, Long Gu Ming asked some more details of the battle, and Zichun answered them one by one. Yu Gue rested on Zichen's shoulder and scanned the surroundings. Once there was anything that didn't know what to do, it would attack immediately. Yu Gue's combat strength was also extraordinary. It had no problem bringing Zichen's group safely to the 2nd floor. "Did you see Hongi?" Long Gu Ming's beautiful eyes looked at Zichun as she stepped forward. Zichun shook his head and said, No, I didn't see Longrui either. I did see Noah. Shanya on the other side said, we didn't see them either. I don't know how they are. In fact, this was normal because the Saint Soul Mountain was very big, like a world. Not everyone could encounter it. There were quite a few people on this level. They were all existences that did not have the qualifications to enter the second level. Thus, they were trying their best to find the best opportunity on this level. Along the way, after seeing Zichen's group, many people's eyes flashed, but after thinking about it, they dismissed the idea of robbing. This disappointed many people in the city who were prepared to watch a good show. Soon, they arrived at the passage to the second floor, and there were more people wandering around. There was no guard at the entrance of the passage, but there was a strange force that blocked those who were not qualified on this floor. In other words, they couldn't see the passage to the second floor at all, so they couldn't go up. This was the obstruction of the Saint Soul Mountain. The three of them entered the passage and went up to the second floor. The area on the second floor was wider, so there were naturally more people on this floor. The three of them naturally wouldn't stay here for too long and headed straight for the third floor. When they were about to reach the entrance of the third floor, Zichun suddenly stopped. Lan Guming and Shanya also stopped at the same time. Do you want to follow us directly to the third floor? Zichen's indifferent voice sounded. He had already noticed that they were being followed. Footsteps came from behind them, and many people appeared. Your perception is quite sharp. A laugh was heard, and a young man in luxurious clothes walked out from behind the crowd. The people in the city who were originally listless were all energized after seeing this scene. Since he dared to find trouble with Zichun, it was obvious that there was something fun to watch. No one was familiar with this young man, but it was obvious that he had a strong background. He had gathered many people in the Saint Soul Mountain, and he specialized in robbing. Moreover, he took pleasure in it and didn't care much about the opportunities here. The voice came from behind. Zichun turned around and looked at the young man. The young man was wearing a long robe with flowing brilliance. He was showing off very much, as if he was worried that others wouldn't know that his robe was of extraordinary quality. There were many people around the young man, and they were all in the human soul realm. However, Zichun didn't care. His gaze fell on the young man's side, where a strong man stood there like an iron tower. The strong man's eyes were full of vigilance, but there was also some worry in them. He should be the young man's guardian. The young man said, I haven't had enough fun here, and I didn't expect a big fish to come. Shan Kuei told me that the three of you are quite famous, and that you were the first or second in the previous quota. He told me not to provoke you, but in my opinion, you are just lucky. The young man pointed at himself and said, Since I was young, I have never lacked luck. Therefore, it is truly your misfortune to have met this young master, who is the luckiest man in his life. Zichun frowned. What are you trying to say? The young man stretched out his hand again, pointing at Shanya and Lan Guming and said, I came in a hurry this time and didn't bring any maids with me. Let them serve me, and you can leave. Shanya and Lan Guming's eyes immediately turned cold. Zichun said indifferently, Do you want to die? The young man looked at Zichun and said proudly, In my eyes, there is no such thing as death. The next moment, the young man waved his hand and said, Beat him hard, but don't kill him. I don't like to see blood. It's inauspicious. Hearing this, the people around rushed towards Zichun. In the city, most of the people who saw this scene couldn't bear to look at it. Chapter 3877. Bang, bang, bang. Powerful shockwaves spread out in all directions. Sand and stones flew up from the ground, and thick smoke billowed. The existences that were rushing towards Zichun came quickly and flew even faster. No one could block Zichun's attack, and they were all blown away. After they landed on the ground, their faces were filled with shock as they looked at Zichun in disbelief. They did not continue to move forward because they were not seriously injured. Obviously, it was not because the opponent was not strong, but because he did it deliberately. The control of this power made them even more frightened. If they insisted on moving forward, they would be courting death. In fact, the reason why they were not injured was because the young man had said that the opponent did not want to kill them. The strong man who looked like an iron tower stood in front of the young man. When he looked at Zichun again, it was as if he was facing a great enemy. He had arrived late and did not see the scene of Zichun obtaining first place in the assessment. He had only heard about it, so he did not pay too much attention to it. However, with the principle of avoiding unnecessary trouble, he advised the young master not to act rashly. He did not expect the opponent to be so strong. It was useless to rely on numbers. He also saw that the opponent did not want to kill him. The confident smile on the young man's face disappeared. He looked at Zichun with surprise. I didn't expect you to have some skills, but do you think you can scare me? Shan Kuei, beat him. The strong man named Shan Kuei said hesitantly, Young master, it's getting late. Didn't you say you were hungry? Shouldn't we prepare to eat? The young man said with dissatisfaction, If I don't beat this guy to death, how can I be in the mood to eat? Beat me? Beat him hard. Don't hold back. Shan Kuei looked helpless, but when he turned around, his eyes became firm. He cupped his fists at Zichun and said, Excuse me. The next moment, a violent aura surged out from Shan Kuei's body. He rushed forward in an instant, and his aura was like rolling thunder. Shanya and Lan Guming each took a step forward, wanting to fight. Zichun slowly shook his head. With a flash of his body, he moved forward. Lightning radiated from his body. Compared to Shan Kuei's thunderous aura, Zichun's power was the true power of thunder. The two figures met in midair, and it was as if two mountains had collided, causing a loud boom. The air waves rolled far away, and the trees in the distance were snapped in half. Countless leaves danced in the air. Shan Kuei's figure was pushed back by the collision, and his expression became more serious. With a slight sway of his body, he neutralized the opponent's power and continued forward. This time, he used his martial arts. One move after another was displayed. The young man stood below and lifted his head to look at this scene. His eyes gradually narrowed as his expression changed. He was well aware of how strong Shan Kuei was, but in this physical confrontation, Shan Kuei was actually retreating. He was clearly at a disadvantage. The young man's face was filled with dissatisfaction. Shan Kuei, don't hold back anymore. Let's fight. Hearing the young man's words, Shan Kuei's eyes narrowed. An even more powerful aura surged out from his body. Along with the appearance of this aura, a complete set of armor appeared on Shan Kuei's body. This set of armor covered Shan Kuei's entire body, including his head, hands, and feet. Only his eyes were exposed. It could be said that Shan Kuei was armed to the teeth. Excuse me. Shan Kuei, who was fully armed, spoke again. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward. This time, it was as if he was carrying a monstrous wave of anger, and his aura was even more turbulent. Sensing the change in Shan Kuei's aura, Zichun's expression became serious. His opponent's combat strength was not very strong, but with this set of armor, he needed to take him seriously. Zichun threw out a punch. Lightning circled around his fist. This punch was full of momentum and could be considered as his most powerful punch. A powerful vibration force circled around his fist. Boom! Like a thunderclap exploding in the sky, a terrifying fluctuation spread out. Those who were closer to the battlefield were directly sent flying by the aftermath. Shan Kuei took a step back. Zichun retreated 10 feet. The previous vibration force was also blocked by the armor and could not be transmitted into the opponent's body. Two streams of air appeared from below. Shanya and Lan Guming's figures appeared. When they saw Zichun retreating, a strange look appeared in their beautiful eyes. One must know that Zichun could even defeat Sheng Luan, but now he was repelled by a person who stayed on the second floor. At this time, the city was also in an uproar. Although most people still did not recognize who the young man was, they recognized the origin of the armor on Shan Kuei's body. They really did not expect that the opening of the sacred mountain would even cause that family to send people here. Shan Kuei stood in the air, looking at Zichun, who was 10 feet away, and said, "You are not my opponent. Quickly retreat." Retreat? That won't do. Shan Kuei, you can't make the decision. The young man's voice sounded again. How to deal with him is my business. Now you just need to beat him until he can't fight back. Young master, this... Before Shan Kuei could finish his words, he was interrupted by the young man. Don't worry. Even if the sky falls, I will hold it up. Shan Kuei had to agree because he could not go against the young master's wishes. Zichen looked at the apologetic Shan Kuei and said, "In that case, I won't be polite." With a flash of brilliance, a spirit shield appeared in his hand. The young man could not help but sneer. "I thought you had a lot of skills. It turns out that you just want to block it. But can you block it?" Shan Kuei looked at the extraordinary spirit shield in Zichen's hand, his eyes flashing, and asked, "May I ask, is this Yu Yi's companion spirit shield?" "Good eyesight." Zichen held the shield in his right hand, saying, "Next, I won't hold back." "So, you defeated Yu Yi?" In Shan Kuei's eyes, fighting spirit rose. This was the excitement of seeing a prey. The young man's expression changed again. This time, there was a touch of interest in his eyes. Zichen held the shield and moved forward. Shan Kuei clenched his fist and attacked. He did not use his sole weapon. This battle armor armed to the teeth was his strongest weapon. In the sky, the two of them were like two meteorites, colliding again and again. The powerful fluctuations caused by the collision forced several people to retreat. Shanya and Lan Meng both retreated, leaving the battlefield to Zichen and Shan Kuei. One was a tailor-made battle armor made by a famous expert. The other was by Bing from Sacred Weapon Mountain. This was a real meeting of the strong. The young man who had retreated long ago looked at the scene of the collision in the sky, and a dazzling light appeared in his eyes. The deafening roar resounded through the sky. The spirit shield flickered. In addition to defense, the spirit shield also emitted a repulsive force, which repelled Shan Kuei every time. The battle lasted for nearly 20 breaths. After the last collision, Shan Kuei's battle armor exploded with a loud bang, announcing that it was broken. Chapter 3878. With the armor broken, Shan Kuei's battle prowess was naturally weakened. He was no longer a match for Zichen. The other party did not have the intention to kill, so Zichen stopped. Shan Kuei cupped his fists at Zichen and said in shame, "I lost." This was an indisputable fact because Zichen's light shield was still intact. Shan Kuei said again, "May I ask if this weapon has been baptized?" Zichen nodded and said, "Its grade should be in the top 100 now. Losing to 100 soldiers is not an injustice." Shan Kuei shook his head and sighed. He seemed to be free and easy, but his face was full of regret because the expensive armor was ruined just like that. "So what if it's 100 soldiers?" "Shan Kuei, don't underestimate others and destroy your own prestige." The young man in the distance suddenly soared into the air and stood in front of Shan Kuei. There was also a rising battle intent on his body. "Young master, you can't." Shan Kuei was shocked and hurriedly dissuaded him. He had personally experienced Zichen's battle prowess. Just that light shield alone was not something his young master could resist. It was unknown whether it was confidence or arrogance, but the young man waved his hand to signal Shan Kuei not to say anything. He looked at Zichen and said, "Today, I'll let you see what it means to say that there is always someone better than you. Don't think that you're invincible just because you have 100 soldiers." Zichen looked at the young man and saw that a powerful aura suddenly surged out from the young man's body. It was emitted by his long robe. "It's the Fong clan. It's definitely the Fong clan. Only the Fong clan can forge such an armor and such a unique magic spiritual robe." Seeing the young man's glowing robe, many people in the Sagely Mountain city exclaimed. The Fong clan was a force north of the Sagely Mountain, and it was a real big force. They were famous for refining defensive artifacts and were truly a huge clan with wealth that could rival countries. There had always been a rumor that the Fong clan's power could compete with one of the Sagely Mountains. It was obvious that they had a strong foundation. At this moment, the magic spiritual robe displayed by the young man was obviously of high quality. Zichen looked at the young man in front of him with coldness in his eyes. The young man smiled and said, "So what if you have 100 soldiers? If you're not good at attacking, how can you break through my defense?" All of a sudden, rays of light burst forth from the young man's robes. These rays of light scattered in all directions, forming a defensive barrier. "Even if I stand here and let you attack, you won't be able to break through my defense." The corners of the young man's mouth curled up. The sarcasm in his voice was very obvious. Are you sure? Zichen looked at the young man. The young man snorted and said, Today, I will teach you a lesson. There is always someone better than you. Don't think that you are so amazing just because you defeated Yu-E. Zichen withdrew his shield and switched to his baton. Light blossomed from the staff, and a powerful aura was released. Zichen's stick fell. Space seemed to be torn apart by this staff. Shan Kuei felt as if he was facing a great enemy. He wanted to go up and block, but without his armor, he would definitely die if he went up. The young man signaled Shan Kuei to step back with his eyes. As expected, Shan Kuei stood there without moving. Shan Kuei had no choice but to retreat. Zichen's staff fell on the young man's body. Countless ripples surged out like ripples on the surface of water, layer by layer, neutralizing the power of Zichen's staff. Zichen felt that the power of the staff was constantly dissipating, but the young man's defense was still intact. Zichen's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had been careless. If it was a battle of life and death, he would be at a disadvantage. The young man still looked at Zichen with a smile. The sarcasm on his lips did not diminish. How is it? Zichen's second strike landed, and a purple-gold light blossomed from the body of the staff. With a bang, the youth's defense was immediately broken, and dozens of cracks appeared on his long robe. The young man's body flew backward. The previously arrogant robes hung on his body like rags, fluttering back and forth. "Young master!" Shan Kuei exclaimed and flew into the distance. However, his reaction was too slow. He did not expect that the difference in power between Zichen's first and second attack would be so great. The young man's body fell to the ground, and then he began to cough up blood. The surroundings were silent. Even the Sagely Mountain City was quiet for a moment. Shan Kuei came closer. The young man waved his hand and said, "I'm fine." As he spoke, he actually coughed up blood again. Shan Kuei was very worried about his young master, but he was more worried about Zichen. Hence, he turned around and looked at Zichen vigilantly. Zichen did not continue. He glanced at Shan Kuei, then at the young man, and then turned to leave. The young man staggered to his feet and looked at Zichen, who turned to leave. He laughed and let the blood flow from the corner of his mouth. He did not care and said, "This is only the second level, and you're already running away. Won't you be chased on the third level?" Lan Guming and Shanya looked back at the young man with cold eyes. It was Zichen who let him go. Not only did he not know how to be grateful, he even dared to provoke him. "Let's go." Just as the two of them were hesitating whether they should teach the other party a lesson, Zichen's voice rang out in their ears. The two of them could only follow Zichen. Before they left, they did not forget to warn the young man with hateful eyes. That's right. It must be the second generation of the Fong clan, Fong Wumian. He could have provoked anyone, but he dared to provoke Zichen. A set of armor and a magic robe were destroyed just like that. What a pity. What's there to pity? The Fong clan is rich, and that person is Fong Wulian. He was born to be a prodigal. The second generation of the Fong clan, Fong Wulian, was affectionately called Fong Wumian because of his reputation. He could do anything shameless. For example, in this trial, he went to the Saint Soul Mountain. Not only did he not gain anything, but he also suffered a great loss. Furthermore, there were countless similar stories. He was extremely proficient in swindling, raping, plundering, jesting, and stealing. It was said that he himself was not well liked in the Fong clan. If it wasn't for his extraordinary status, he would have died countless times already. However, to the pity of countless people, Fong Wulian had a good family background. His brother was also the future leader of the Fong clan. Therefore, many people dared not speak out against him. Fong Wulian, who was called Fong Wumian, was wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. He patted Shan Kuei's shoulder and said, "You've worked hard." Shan Kuei was ashamed. "What's with your expression? Isn't it just a set of armor? I'll make you another set when we get back. Come, let's go back now." Fong Wulian said, "Go back now?" Shan Kuei was stunned and said, "But we haven't gotten anything yet. We haven't been to the third floor either. It's already like this. If we don't go back, are we waiting to be beaten up by others?" Fong Wulian waved his hand and said, "I'm not going to the third floor. With my personality, I might beat up anyone I don't like." Right now, I can't beat anyone. Come, let's go back to the Sagely Mountain City and call a few girls. We'll go to the undrunk brothel to drink and have fun. The city was filled with booze. Chapter 3879. After entering the third level, Zichun remained silent. He seemed to have a lot on his mind. Seeing Zichen's silence, Lan Guming and Shanya were not in a good mood. Lan Guming muttered, "Actually, we shouldn't have let that arrogant guy go. If it weren't for his robe, he wouldn't have been able to withstand even one move from Zichun." This was to comfort Zichun. Of course, it was also the truth. Zichun came back to his senses and smiled. "I'm fine. I was just thinking about something and got a little distracted." Lan Guming smiled and teased, "That's good. Shanya, and I thought you had suffered a blow." Zichun said, "It's not a blow, but I did learn something." Lan Guming said in surprise, "That guy doesn't look like a decent person at first glance. You actually took his nonsense seriously?" Zichun smiled and did not explain. He was probably the only one who knew the reason behind this. On the third level of the Saint Soul Mountain, Zichun, Lan Guming, and Shanya each obtained a Saint Soul technique. This was what they deserved. Next, the three of them headed for the fourth level. As for whether they could reach the fourth level, Zichun was not worried at all. Lan Guming was a Saint Soul goddess. Her attainments in the Saint Soul technique were absolutely extraordinary. Entering the fourth level would not be a problem. Shanya's extraordinary background also proved that she had the potential. As for Zichen himself, he had to enter the fourth level to find the Dark Ghost Soul devouring technique. This was his goal. There were obviously fewer people on this level. Some people they met along the way deliberately avoided them after seeing the three of them. This wasn't because they knew of Zichen's deeds in battle, and it was because they didn't want to cause trouble after coming here. If they were to fail miserably in an easy task and lose the fortune here, then the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. As they were about to reach the entrance of the fourth level, Zichun saw a person standing at the entrance of the fourth level. He was facing Zichun with his back to the entrance. It was a man with a young woman beside him. The young woman gave Zichun a familiar feeling, but he could not remember where he had seen her before. The three of them did not look at the woman. Instead, they looked at the man. They knew him. He had ranked fourth in the previous assessment. He was Luo Tsong. If Zichen and the other two had not appeared out of nowhere, he would have taken first place last time. "You are much slower than I imagined," Luo Tsong said indifferently as he looked at Zichun. "What's the matter?" asked Zichun. "It's not a big deal. I just wanted to discuss with you what happened last time." Luo Tsong walked forward. The woman beside him did not move. Her eyes were dull, as if she was a human-shaped puppet. Zichun stared at Luo Tsong expressionlessly. At this moment, two more people appeared on both sides. Lan Guming and Shanya turned around to face the two. Zichun used his sole focus and said, "Don't be careless. Go all out." Luo Tsong moved. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. "Go all out," Zichen shouted. Light flashed in front of him. He held the shield in his left hand and the staff in his right. The moment he held the shield, he activated it with all his strength. Luo Tsong appeared in front of him as if he had teleported. Like a torrent of power, he crazily poured towards Zichun. The shield blocked it. Boom, 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 boom. The powerful force pushed Zichun back. At this moment, Zichun could only see the light of the bursting energy. Other than that, he could not see anything else. The powerful force was neutralized by the 100 soldiers' light shield. Some of the remaining force penetrated the light shield and entered Zichen's body. Within Zichen's body, there seemed to be the sound of a drum. Even though his physical body was strong after practicing combat arts, he was unable to withstand it at this moment. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Zichen's mouth. At this moment, Zichen's heart was filled with horror. If he had not been vigilant and attacked with all his strength, he would have been at a disadvantage because of his carelessness. Even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. Obviously, this guy called Luo Tsong came prepared. Countless rays of light bloomed. Zichun continued to gather power in the light shield, allowing the power in his body to be drained quickly. At this moment, he only wanted to defend. Counterattack did not exist. "How are you?" At the same time, he shouted and inquired about the two's situation. The two did not respond. Zichen's ears were full of raging energy. His perception had been blocked. This made his heart skip a beat, and he had a bad feeling. At this moment, the Sagely Mountain City was in an uproar. No one could have imagined that after killing Sheng Luan, Zichen, who was almost invincible, would be attacked so violently. Luo Tsang was wearing armor, holding a weapon in his hand, and there were sacred talismans on both sides of him. He also had various weapons that could launch attacks. In an instant, he displayed a violent attack that directly drowned Zichen. At the same time, in another direction, Shanya and Lan Guming were also attacked. Fortunately, the two girls had listened to Zichen and displayed their strongest means. Of course, it was also because their opponent was not as strong as Zichen. The powerful impact forced Zichen to continuously retreat. During this period, the power that fell on the light shield was slowly weakening. This weakening was only relative. It did not mean that it was not scary. When the energy reached a controllable range, Zichen suddenly struck out with his staff. More than 2/3 of the patterns on the staff lit up. The original black color turned into a purple-gold color. The world suddenly lit up. A purple-gold staff shadow appeared and destroyed the violent energy in front of it. With a boom, the staff shadow sent Luo Tsang flying. The energy in front of him dissipated. Zichen saw Luo Tsang, Shanya, and Lan Guming. He also saw the other two. However, the two of them were lying in a pool of blood. They were no longer breathing. Shanya and Lan Guming were unharmed. In front of them, a sacred soul weapon had appeared. If it had not been for the sacred soul weapon, the two of them would have been at a disadvantage. The battle was over, but the two girls were still a little pale. They still had lingering fear. Luo Tsang fell to the ground and spat out blood. He looked at Zichen with an ugly expression. Zichen walked slowly toward Luo Tsang with a shield in his left hand and a staff in his right. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Shanya and Lan Guming also approached him. After experiencing the previous attack, the three of them would not be careless. At this moment, they would join forces to kill Luo Tsang. "You're really lucky." Luo Tsang snorted coldly. He stood up and a light appeared under his feet. In the next moment, his body was enveloped by the light and disappeared. He had used his strongest move and still could not kill Zichen. Luo Tsang naturally had to leave. Otherwise, what awaited him would be death. Fang Wulian, who was about to reach the Sagely Mountain City, looked up and saw the scene in the city. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. This time, his smile was full of mockery.